right. All right, chat. Welcome on in. You guys ready for this? All right, here we go. On 3, 2, 1. All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 26 of the Battlefield Show, the only Battlefield talk show here on Twitch. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming along. I can see that the Mus gang is here. Hello, welcome, everybody. I am joined here with Battlefield ex-professional gamer, known hacker, Mr. mus1CK. Hello, mus1CK. How you doing?
Hello. And also, I don't really hope that people call themselves Mus gang. Jesus.
Mus gang. No,
please, to all my subs out there who are probably watching this, please don't call yourself that. Please, you know better.
All right. So about the whole face cam thing. Hey, I tried, and it's like, hey, you down? And mus1CK was simply like, I don't have a webcam.
I don't have a webcam. I even tell people this all the time. I don't own a webcam. I have no need for a webcam. I don't want a webcam, so I'm good. All right, guys, got to look at the logo, I guess, and listen to ASMR for me and Julian.
There you go. Well, I hope you guys enjoy it the rest of the stream. Maybe I might whisper for the rest of the night. I don't know.
Oh, now you're just turning on the kinks of a lot of people.
I was but a wee little AOD boy when I ran into mus1CK, playing on the AOD servers back in the day in Battlefield 1. Him, Ravik, and Edgar and Fedge would always come on to our servers, and we would have a blast all the time. Yeah, it got a little hairy, and I know some of the AOD leadership were like, okay, we ain't have a talk here because you're killing all of our servers. And I was like, dude, I love this. Like, we get to play. Sometimes when I get on your team, it's always a blast. But
AOD, I have a lot of respect for, because I mean, I've told people this before in the past, like way back in the day, like 2005 to 2007, I was an AOD, but I was in there for Counter-Strike. I was playing Counter-Strike Source at the time. So I mean, I know the inner workings of how that entire thing works, but obviously since I've left all those years ago, it's been like, what now, almost 10 years, 15 years since then. So
God. They've been around for ages. They're still around.
They've been around for a very long time. But AOD in terms of Battlefield has been around for a long time as well, especially since when I was there, they were playing at the time BF2, and then they started playing 2142.
Oh,
and they started, you know, obviously going up from there whenever new iterations come out. But at least for Battlefield 4, I know that AOD definitely did not like us joining their server, at least when we were playing, because there were times where it's never our intention. I should point this out too. When we play a game, it's never our intention to go like, yes, let's go smash servers. This is going to be great. Excellent. No, it's like, I just want to go in there and I want to play the game. I have no intention. If I make you mad, I'm sorry. It's not my intention. I'm just playing the game. So
it's all Edgar's fault, really. He's the one that started all this. Him and his big mouth.
No, it's not necessarily that. It's the fact that we would play in AOD servers, and then,
from my perspective.
Well, maybe for you, yes, but I'm referring to Battlefield 4, where I think it was Deity at the time, and I think Deity is still part of AOD. Got bad to the point where, you know, we were banned, and that was it. We eventually did get unbanned, and we talked to Deity a bunch, and Deity's a swell guy. He's a very nice guy, but it was to the point where it's like, okay, we feel like we were kind of unfairly banned, so we do something about this. And yeah, so we have a decent understanding now, and well, with the current scenario of how Battlefield's going, there obviously hasn't been any sort of admin issues since.
We're in a totally different world now, mus1CK. A new era of Battlefield, I guess you can call it that. I don't know. We're in confusing times. Things are very quiet right now because of the whole pandemic. I just wanted to reach out to you. How are you doing in this whole pandemic right now? You guys doing okay? Family, friends are good?
Oh, I'm doing okay. I've been basically my secret. I'm an introvert. No, but no, but really, I've been doing okay for the most part since this has been happening. I've been definitely, what's affected me the most, more than anything, is I used to gather with my friends on weekends And,
Mhm.
we would catch up with our weeks, talk about what's going on in our lives, and I miss my friends. I miss seeing them. I talk to them all the time, but that's a big thing for me, is I don't see my friends as much anymore. So it's been a struggle,
Oh,
especially for
yeah.
me, because I mean, I see my family all the time, of course, but
Mhm.
I it's more or less this whole COVID-19 thing is just about staying away from everybody, because Lord knows, even if I have it, I don't want to give it to my parents. That's the big thing.
Oh,
So
same here. That's dude, every single time I go to work, I'm like one of the few people that still work for a one of those essential jobs, essential jobs, right? And
mhm.
yeah, every time I come home, dude, I'm scared. Like I miss going, my grandma's house and just talking to her every once in a while. Can't do that, so it's like left to the phone now. And now every time I come into the house, I immediately wash my hands and all that stuff. So it's really
Oh
nerve
yeah.
wracking because when it happens, it's gonna hit you hard, And
Yep.
I just hope that doesn't happen. So I'm glad you're doing good through all this. I'm hopeful that everyone in the chat's doing well through this pandemic, staying inside, washing their hands, and playing some
Yep.
Battlefield question mark.
I mean, play whatever you want, but the more important thing currently is stay inside and wash your hands. I tell people that, and just be safe and practice safe practices to ensure others are healthy as well. So.
Again, welcome everybody coming on here. Uh, of course, this is the Battlefield Show. We're gonna be talking with music about Battlefield and many other different things you may not know about music. Who knows? The first thing I wanted to go and touch on is your Battlefield history. What was your first Battlefield?
My first Battlefield, of course, was 1942, a little
Ooh.
Battlefield game that came out during the good old year of 2002. I was 12 at the time, about 12 years old, and this was coming off of me being in a huge World War II kick, simply because up until this point, probably since I was about 10, I had been playing Dave Defeat, which was my
Ah,
first
yes.
multiplayer shooter. And I've talked about that extensively many times, where Dave Defeat, in Still in My Eyes, was probably my favorite shooter that I ever got into. But granted, things look a little different when you're 10 compared to when you're now almost 30 years old. Uh, but at the time, it really was a huge influential game for me, just because not only was the prime of World War II films coming out, you had like Saving Private Ryan, you had Band of Brothers coming out, and
Oh
the
yeah.
World War going on the World War II binge was there, because World War II games were coming out left and right. And then
Call of Duty got
19
into that. Call of
yeah,
Duty
Call of Duty
2.
was 2003. Yeah. And that was coming off of Medal of Honor. But then
Mm-hmm.
1942 came out, obviously, which was then based off of Dice's first game, which I believe was Codename Eagle. I want to say is what it was
Yeah,
called.
I think that strikes a bell. Yeah, I think it's something like that.
And it
But there,
was
yeah.
it was very unique for the time, because Battlefield 1942 really was such a different game, because it was like, oh, not only do I have infantry, I have separate classes now. Oh, I can get in this tank. I can drive a car. What is this game? This is amazing. And so it really was the start of something unique, because a lot of people hadn't really played full blown combined arms games at that point, including myself. So it was something that hooked me right away, where I'm like, oh, I can actually do other things that seem so immersive.
Yeah.
And I loved it as a kid. It was wonderful.
Did you end up playing Battlefield 2? Or you played
I
all of them? You played all
I
of them,
have
right?
played every Battlefield game, every single one, even console ones. I even played
Oh.
the lesser known and not very good, and I'm probably going to trigger some people for saying that,
Oh
but
no.
the Battlefield 2 version on the console, where you could swap players, interesting mechanic, by the way, but
Interesting. Wow.
it wasn't very good. But that was back during the days where we had different console games and different PC games, and Battlefield 2 was, of course, based off of Desert Combat, and they
Mm-hmm.
brought in the Desert Combat guys to make BF2, and the BF2 was on PC is amazing as well, and I
What
have a
was
lot
that
of fun
stupid
memories of that
game
game.
called? What was that the console version of BF2? What was it called again?
It was Modern Combat. It was called
Was it
Battlefield 2
Modern Combat?
Modern Combat.
Modern Combat? Yeah.
It was a
Goofy
totally
game.
different experience compared to the refractor based games, but those were, of course, during different times, again, where we had games that would come under the same name, but they'd be totally different games. Just like how Call of Duty games on consoles during that era were totally different compared to what we had on PC.
Gotcha. Let's just get this out of the way. What was your favorite Battlefield game?
Bad Company 2.
Bad Company 2. Oh man. So in Bad Company 2, you're heavily invested in competition, really. What was your main team? I think it was like Legacy Esports, right?
Legacy Esports was the team I joined during Bad Company 2, and that was kind of its own interesting story of joining because it wasn't my original intent on competing. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to join this team to compete. It was like, well, I'm playing with some old friends because at the time it was, coming off of the end of me being in AOD in 2007 to 2010. So I was just kind of doing my own thing, still kept in contact with friends. And I was heavily playing with my old friend and teammate Radix, who was on AOD with me. And I'd known Radix since 2005. I haven't talked to him in many, many years now because I think he joined the military. But even then, I miss the guy. But we, at the time, we're just playing the game. We're like, oh, look, another new Battlefield game came out. We're like, oh, sweet, this one looks great.
Man. And it wasn't just, at the time, it wasn't just a regular old Battlefield game. I mean, this is a whole new engine. It must have been crazy.
It was coming off the point where 1943 was promised to us on PC, because that's when 1943 came out on the Xbox arcade, and everyone's going, oh, they're like, oh yeah, this is going to come to PC, and we're all waiting for it. We're like, yes, this is going to finally be our chance to experience Frostbite.
Yep.
And it never came. And I know a lot of us are still out there talking about like, man, they really should have done that, and we kind of wish 1943 had come to PC. But this was the first time after a full lull in a while between 2142 to then that the only thing that came out was Bad Company 1 in 1943. So we were itching at that point for another Battlefield game on PC. We were ready. And when I still will attest to this day that DICE made their best trailers for Bad Company 2, because they did the one thing that I wish they would do now, which is just gameplay. Because it was just gameplay trailers. And the one that always sticks with me the most is the Panama Canal trailer for BC2, because even though you could tell some things were slightly scripted a little bit, it was still it was actual gameplay. So you're like, oh, you can do this? This looks amazing. And it was. Everything it turned out with BC2 was inherently amazing, at least for me. But it was... Yeah.
I showed a lot of my friends on stream the older Battlefield trailers. I mean, they're just hyped as fuck, and nowadays things are weird now, especially with that reveal trailer. But man, they have certainly picked up their game when it comes to trailers now, and especially with the graphics and everything. But dude, the trailers really explained exactly what you could have done, especially with that Bad Company 2 multiplayer reveal trailer. It showed you like how to use the dart and everything, and knifing, and all the different pieces of equipment you can use.
The best part, it was just at a point where they could show off what they had and what you could do, instead of the just oh, this is what we have now, but this is going to change like 1 month, 2 months, 5 months down the line, so you're going to get a totally different product. Or as we call it nowadays, a Ubisoft. So you show one thing and then you get another, and that's kind of the sad thing, that we live in the day and age where we have Ubisoft trailers for everything. Battlefield 5 was definitely a good example of that, especially during the reveal trailer to then. But for Bad Company 2, at least, as starting earlier on your earlier question, I went in there playing with my friend Radix, and we were just looking to play the game. And that was it. We wanted to have a good time. We loved the Battlefield series equally. And so we started playing. And, because we had been playing Counter-Strike for many, many years, and I still attest that Counter-Strike gave me a lot of my FPS skills, because it teaches you so many things.
Same here.
We were pretty good. I don't like tooting my own horn, but we were relatively above average, I will say, at the game. And so as we're playing, we encounter my teammate, well, not then teammate, but future teammate, Hawkeyes. And Hawkeyes just popping. He's like, you guys are you guys are really good at this. He's like, you guys looking for a team? And we're like,
Oh shit.
I mean, not actively, I guess, but sure. I mean, we were at that time. We were just like, we're just really looking for people, I guess, to play with, and not so much compete. But you know, so I think Radix.
Was there some kind of scene at the time that, oh hey, maybe we might be able to slip into that competitive
It
scene?
goes. It definitely goes further than that. It's like I can get into that here. So when
Yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
originally joined, Radix, I think was the first one of us to join, and I was kind of hesitant, of course, because it's just like, well, I had just got done playing with AOD, and I don't know how much I really want to get into this, blah blah blah. But it was like, okay, fine. I want to play with people at this point.
Yeah.
So I we joined the Legacy Mumble at the time, which we're like, oh, Mumble over Ventrilo. This is weird.
Humble. Oh
That was
man.
my first time using Mumble for the first time, but you're like, oh man, this thing is way better than
It's
Ventrilo because that's
great.
what we've been
Oh
using for
my
years.
god. Yeah, the latency, the low latency on Mumble was fantastic. I was
The
like, this is
latency and the
impossible.
codecs, yeah,
Yeah.
they were a huge step up. But once I got to know a lot of those guys in Legacy, you know, early on, you're like, these guys are pretty cool, and then you hear about, oh yeah, they're competing. They're like, oh, there's leagues in this game, and so at the time, this was me having a little bit of competitive background in Counter Strike because that was around the time when Cal was going, or for those who are uninitiated, the Cyber Athlete Amateur League is what it was called. It was a
Ah.
subsidiary of CPL, the professional league. It was really big at the time, especially because that's where a lot of the founding esports games were played, especially when you get legends like Jonathan Fatality Wendell, who was multiple time champions in Quake and Painkiller, and you had your CS 1.6 teams, like it was all there. So I
Mhm.
dabbled a little bit in competition in Counter Strike, but never took it super seriously. Uh, but having that background experience did prepare me for things like, you know, scrims, IRC,
Yeah, what
different
was that
places to
like? What
sign
was
up.
like your first scrim like? Well, playing with some of the legacy guys.
Uh, First scrims were generally 8v8 conquest. It was pretty much that was one of the things that you learned right away was that because we had so many people on the team, we played 8v8 conquest as the main one.
Yeah.
We didn't really get into squad rush right away, but it was a bit, at least I didn't, but it was definitely something that was my favorite or turned out to be my favorite later down the line. So you
Oh yeah.
learn very heavily that it's a team based game and that you have to control certain areas of the map heavily and certain people go here, certain people use these vehicles, this person's designated to this role.
Uh-huh.
You have your IGL, which is looking at the map at all times and making calls for what needs to be capped, where enemies are going. If there's a mass rush, you know, there's tactics for everything, and it was so
Mhm.
different for me,
What did
not
you
only
do?
because it was like
What did you focus on
a
then?
little bit of everything at the
Oh,
time.
okay.
So it's
That's a good
whatever
idea
you
though, right?
need, you fill the role and you figure out
Yeah.
what your strengths and weaknesses are and you play around that and eventually build on it. And it
And
was one of those things that I kind of took pride in. I could do whatever I needed to be done to help the team. And usually for me, if it was, you know, like you rep the tank, you rep the tank. If you need to be the tanker, you be the main tanker. If you have to play infantry and medic, you play medic. Usually my favorite roles were definitely consolidated in med or engineer. I wasn't a big tanker person. We had a bunch of other people,
interesting.
like
Okay.
our teammate.
I was always taking you as a sniper because all the sniping you did in BF1 on your streams, but maybe that turned into like a fascination of like, whoa, this is actually really nice. I should be doing this more often. But that's interesting. Okay. Um so medic and support. Interesting. That's where your strengths were for Bad Company 2?
Well, engineer at the time was
Or
probably, and I
engineer.
still will, I'll still attest that engineer is probably one of the strongest classes in BC2, just because we like to refer to it as the jack of all trades because of the mechanics inherently built into the game for tap firing over spraying. It meant that you could control any weapon regardless of your class at range. So if you had the aim,
Mhm.
it didn't matter what weapon you were using, you could pretty much come out on top if you got the jump and your aim was true. And
Is that kind of similar to Battlefield 4's medic class or assault class?
entirely different.
Entirely different.
Entirely different. Bad
Interesting.
Company 2 is its own demon. Nothing
Ooh.
since then has replicated that style, and that's why I will still attest that Bad Company 2 has been my favorite because it did put a priority on landing your shots correctly over just there's a person, hold left click and hope you get him, which is still one of my bigger gripes with Battlefield today, and I wish that they would go back to that system. I really do.
Yeah, it was very punishing. I saw some old footage of you playing some Bad Company 2. I was gonna show it on stream, but it was very like wacky, and there wasn't really any connection to you in any way. But there's some parts where instead we didn't have a spectator mode back then.
We had really interesting things for spectator.
You had literally players join into the game.
Yes, we did. We had players stand on a roof. One of the big maps. I can't remember. I want to say it was. Oh gosh, was it Valparaiso or Laguna Presa? I can't remember. I think it was Laguna Presa.
Yeah.
The one with the waterfall, and there was a with the waterfall, what you could do is you could do some weird glitch and you could get on top of the waterfall unintentionally. And you would encounter those people all the time in pub games, but that's what they had to do. They had to join one team, and then they had to hop on top of the waterfall specifically on like that map. And what they would do is they would play recon and they would pull out the mortar goggles and they would just look around the map where everyone is in the kill feed, and they try to determine where one person was getting killed from and another person was. So they'd have the map open, the goggles, and it wasn't good. For the time, it was not good for spectating because it just wasn't there in Frostbite engine games. If you really wanted to get the perspective, you had to get players' own recording perspectives. So it was the wild, wild west for at the time for esports in that game. Yeah,
no tech existed at that time. Sorry, guys. When did spectator mode come in? Like, is it BF3, right?
BF3 had its own spectator mode. Yep, it did. And that was definitely when we started getting people who could actually do their job a little bit better. And it still wasn't perfect. Spectator mode was still a little janky in BF3, but it was way better than having to stand on a waterfall with goggles.
So when I think about music here, I always think about his partner in crime here, Ravik, who I don't think would ever try to do something like this, but I tried. Okay, I tried. But you guys are two peas in a pod. Where the hell did you guys first meet?
Legacy. I mean, we were friends. That's really what it comes down to. It just, you have people who equal-minded and you had connect on different things that you enjoy, and you play the game, and he's pretty much one of the only people I've kept in contact with significantly over the years because everybody else has kind of dropped off. Granted, I think the only teammate I relatively talk to on a normal basis is Smack, but Smack has been playing Apex Legends nowadays more than anything else. So, Rav's very much been the only person that's kind of played Battlefield since, but even then, it's just, we like the games. We play the games. We're friends.
And so once the whole like scene kind of died down in Bad Company 2, I'm sure you guys got pretty freaking excited for BF3. What happened there? What is that where you started Fragment, or you kept Legacy? I don't know the order, like
I can explain the entire order if you like.
Sure.
Really what happened was because of Bad Company 2 coming out in 2010, it was like right at the start of 2010. It was weird to see specifically a year later around October when they're like, oh yeah, here's Battlefield 3. And a lot of us playing are scratching our heads like, what? 1 year? 1 year? Well, really? Like, it was confusing because at least between 1942 to Battlefield 2, we had Battlefield Vietnam in between, which was 2 years itself. And that was 2004. And Battlefield Vietnam was pretty much the only other game significantly afterwards that was like, okay, this is 2004. And then here's Battlefield 2, 2005. So we were, again, kind of surprised to see that again between 1 year. So I don't know how much some of us were generally excited to play the game simply because we had been playing BC2 for so long that we felt like it was a little weird to see another one because we thought it was going to last a little bit longer. But nonetheless, we're like, okay, if it's a new one, especially around this time because we had taken a break relatively later, like a couple months towards the end of Bad Company 2 and competition. It wasn't until another team joined up, and I guess I should explain that. One of the big leagues,
Okay.
and it's all leading back to one another. So,
Just a
in Bad Company 2,
condensed version of how one team went to another.
It's we had Team Warfare League, which was the big only league at the time that was really supporting Battlefield, which was TWL. It wasn't until later that ESL tried to dabble in it, but that ultimately didn't work out. But we pretty much had stayed Legacy on top of the ladder for Squad Rush, and this was for many, many months, and finally we're just like, okay, we're going to take a break because nobody else is, at the time challenged us, because that's how matches were formed. They challenged you or you challenged someone else. And so no one challenged us until another team came along by XSS, and some of those guys kind of had poor attitudes, I'm not going to lie. But they're basically made, we can beat you, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Brought a lot of us out, because we'd been just taking breaks, went back to number one. And then, we're waiting once again for BF3. And then BF3 comes out, and the game is just totally different. It kind of has the same metas applied.
It was a disaster. It was a disaster at release.
It wasn't as bad of a disaster as Battlefield 4 was, but it was not great.
True.
A lot of us ended up having people that were really fledgling on wanting to play, and some people were, not committing, but eventually we had people in Legacy that did commit. And so we had enough to form an 8v8 and a squad rush squads from the start. And it works out relatively well for the most part for Legacy. We do okay. We play our old teams that we were playing against in VC2 that are all coming back too. And we can't forget about, this is still one of my favorite stories. There used to be a high tier team by Team Hot, and they used to play BF2, and they didn't really play much in BC2, but, well, rather they played, I guess, at the start and then left. Either way, it was way before me.
But your rival?
No, rival was our rival.
Rival was your rival. Gotcha. Okay.
Yes. Team Rival was definitely, I'm still friends with those guys and I play with them all the time. But they were definitely, our, we would trade blows. We would basically be playing them all the time in BC2 because they were the only one that could match us tit for tat. And it was all about, at that point, outwitting one another, outplaying one another, and it was fun.
And BF3?
And BC2.
What about BF3?
BF3 Rival was still around. But I can get to that here shortly.
What happened? What happened in BF3? Did you guys end up winning? And
in BF3, Legacy had some success in some minor tournaments, especially for ones like Plantronics. Plantronics offered some sections that was fun, and this is way before what people will understand now as modern esports, where you had big contracts and big teams, and you play on LAN and you go to tournaments and you fly around the world and everybody loves you. And no, these are just working everyday people who play at home for the love of the game. And what you got prize money wise was so small that, you had to show people up. At this point, it wasn't just for I make more money than you. It was I'm showing you I'm good at this game for the glory that I can show people. But for Legacy, what happened was we had people closer towards the mid of the game, kind of towards the end of, I want to say 2012 or mid 2012, where we just decided we weren't having fun anymore. Some people weren't having fun. They didn't enjoy the game anymore. They didn't want to compete. And so we just decided to disband the team. But some of us wanted to keep playing together and other people wanted to go elsewhere to compete. And so there was a split.
A fragmentation.
That's kind of what it led to. Yes. As a hint, so people split. We had some people who straight up stopped playing the game and just left. We had people who went and joined Rival because they were still playing at the time, and we understood. And then we had people who were like, well, I don't really want to join Rival simply because they had spots that were already being filled and they couldn't accommodate all of us. So we said, we still have enough of us. Let's make another team. And so we started by playing with people we had played with during BC2 that weren't on Legacy and just kind of started playing together. And then we had kind of formed this little small team called Pub Stars, essentially is what they called it. It wasn't my name that came up with it, but other people came up with it and started using that for about a month while we were in between. And I think they might have competed under Pub Stars for one tournament. I don't remember.
Okay.
Eventually we just decided, it led to Fragment. We decided to finally kick some people out that obviously weren't doing anything for us, and we formed Fragment. And Fragment played a little bit of 8v8 in BF3 and played heavily in Squad Rush in BF3. And that was some of my best competition, at least, was Squad Rush in BF3. And I still have small videos of it here and there back during the days of i5 2500Ks and 580s, where you would get really low FPS when recording. So you had to make sure the video was like 480p and this bit rate and no sound. And it was definitely a new experience for all of us, but I still have those clips. And yeah, Squad Rush and BF3 was a lot of fun, even though the metas were definitely not my favorite.
Yeah. Then BF4 came along, right?
Then Battlefield 4 came along, and it was a disaster.
Disaster.
It was a disaster.
You guys were second guessing yourselves, like, I don't know about this one, guys.
At this point, Fragment had already kind of, we were at that point. We got to number 2 on the leagues between Squad Rush against Rival, and we were back in the BC2 scenario where it's like, yeah, we'll play any other team, but Rivals, they're really our only competition outside of playing against European teams. But playing European teams on their own is a nightmare because ping differentials. But yeah, at that time it was more or less we competed in Fragment for so long that we just decided that we didn't really want to compete in BF4. Rather, we wanted to see what BF4 was like, and BF4 was not good. It launched in the most terrible, awful state where a bunch of us couldn't play. The gunplay changed so drastically. Metas were entirely different. Vehicles were so strong. It just wasn't fun for us, for a lot of us. So we're like, okay, including myself. And that was the big thing. It just wasn't fun. And I had no real ambition or drive to continue competing. I just didn't want to compete anymore. Just because the game wasn't in a good place that made sense for me to compete. And so that's when I just started playing for fun.
Yeah, I found this really old clip of 5v5 Diffuse at PDX LAN when you were with Legacy, and I recognize some names in there. There's Fedge, who I see you play with all the time still. This was back in 2014.
Fedge and I have known each other for many, many years. He's been a childhood friend, so
sick.
Fedge just kind of has been brought in through me. But PDX, even though we have in that clip that I'm looking at now that you brought up, even though we have the name of Legacy, this wasn't actually us playing under the name of Legacy, because at the time Legacy had been gone for years. So they're like, oh, we need a team name. We're like, fuck it, Legacy.
Okay, so what was your team name then?
We didn't have a team name. It was literally just a LAN where there was a tournament happening, and this is one of the tournaments where, if you look up, Level Battlefield was there casting this as well. That was Daskro at the time, and he was there casting it, and they just needed a team name, so we chose Legacy, and that's what we did. We were just like, yeah, we'll bring it back for this tournament, and we did. And this is at the time that I see in the clip where we still had, Slaughter, who was in Fragment, and then went to Exertus, and Grav at the time, who was also playing under Exertus. Yeah, and Beast Mila was one of my old friends as well, who I had known from high school many, many years ago. Just happened to be there, so they needed a fifth, so I chose him, and this was all LAN.
Hey, let's listen in a little bit to this. This is what it was like back in 2014 Battlefield. All you youngins in the chat, check this out.
Let's go to music and see what he's doing. He is at 70% health, still pushing on the periphery into the crane. Trying to get shots. No,
man, that recoil, huh?
Gaslamp did go down, though. Aztec, though, did take out
back
Raven.
During when you had metas like Ace 52.
Oh, ends up dying.
Well, granted, I still think the Ace 52 was probably the only weapon I truly enjoyed engineer-wise.
Oh, no.
You had people, of course, playing the medic metas of Scar H, M16, AEK.
It's now 2-on-4.
but
What
you
is
know, it
Jimmy
was all
Light
over the
gonna
place.
do?
Most people would be using
He's all
Ace
alone,
23,
75% health.
or at least you would see a lot of those Axiom guys
87
using
now.
Ace
The
23.
bomb's already being planted. It's armed. He's not in a good position. He's
Sure,
seen it
so
from
many
all
people are
sides
like,
and
"What the
about
hell
to
is
go down.
defuse?"
The walls are collapsing around
It
him.
was a shoehorned
He must do
idea
something.
of taking
What is
Counter-Strike
Poe
mode and
doing?
putting it in Battlefield
Poe's
4
right
because
next to
that's
him.
what the kids like, apparently. It's
Yeah.
still one of my big gripes that for some reason Squad Rush just wasn't chosen. Squad Rush was way better mode at the time, and I still will argue to this day it is the definitive Battlefield competitive mode, and it is interesting to watch and play, but Defuse was just like, let's take Counter-Strike and put it in here with revives.
Why not?
A lot of us weren't too thrilled at LAN when this was brought out. They were like, oh, we have to play this. Oh,
I see. I was thinking like maybe you guys did like this kind of stuff, but
oh no. This was one of those things that was just shoehorned in that were like, yeah, we're going to play this one. And we're like, do we have to? Okay. So we did. And it forced us definitely to a different scenario of thinking of strats and playing different things. But
okay.
it's what we had to do.
Well, I didn't watch the rest of this video, but did you guys end up winning this finals match here?
We did end up winning. I think the finals was on Zavad, and
Oh boy.
that was during the time where thermals were still heavily abused because you could see through smoke. So once we figured that out, I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna take this Scar H and I'm just gonna go hold the underpass in Zavad, smoke it, and I'm just gonna wait to see if they go for pushes. And you get multiple people who push, and you're just taking care of them. It was.
Are you in this?
Probably
PDX
somewhere. Not in that row. I'm somewhere. This is a 500 person LAN. I couldn't tell you where I was sitting. In all honesty, I don't remember.
God,
It was a 500 person LAN.
Look at those computers. Oh my god. Look at that one.
You definitely still have people who rock those cases that you just pointed out from like 2003. This was 2014, and people were rocking their 2003 cases, and I loved it. I still love seeing them.
Yeah.
People who still rock the old acrylic cases, and I love seeing those just because of nostalgia.
Well, there's a good old Daskro. You said you had an interview with him, right?
I had an interview, I think, with him at some point. I don't remember.
I don't know if it's on this one, but
either way, if people want to see it, it's on the internet. It's there. You can find it.
Face.
Yeah, I know that excites a lot of people, even though it's like I tell people all the time, look it up on YouTube. I don't care. Go look at a video from me from 6 years ago. Okay.
Did you have any mentors while playing competitively?
Mentors? I wouldn't say I had mentors. Kind of like what I brought back earlier when I was talking in CPL. I think I didn't have so much mentors so much as inspiration, in the sense of like Jonathan Fatality Wendell, who even now still streams on Twitch nowadays, which is still really cool. But for someone like me, when I was coming up and you're hearing about all of these pro players and you look at him, you realize that, my God, you know, he made money doing what people at the time thought was absurd. Like he's going to lands and dominating people on his game. He shows no common disregard for them. He's there to do one thing: destroy you. And that was such a huge inspiration for me, because it's the Mamba mentality of if you're gonna do something, you dominate it. You try to be the best you that you can, especially if you're going on a server for bragging rights or money or whatever it is. You gotta prove yourself. And that was a huge inspiration for me personally. Was just like, I wanted to be the best that I could. I knew I never could be the best, and there are people who are always going to be better than me, but dear God, if I'm going to play in a server, I'm going to try my best, and I'm going to make you know, especially on a competitive level.
Oh yeah, you scare all of us away all the time. It's like, music's in here. Bye. I'm out of here.
And that's not even me going try hard mode for the most part.
Oh no.
I'm just playing the game. It's a totally different experience when you go into competitive mode.
Oh, absolutely. I tried that out, not in AOD, but in earlier games like in 2142, where I would usually just pub stomp, and then someone asked me, "You want to be on the team?" I was like, "Sure." And I get on there, man, I am just ass, like terrible. I try to learn. I try to hold my corners and you know, do all. It was hard work. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I just want to play. And
a lot of people don't have what it takes. Yeah,
and I just
it's
gave up on
definitely
that.
it's mentally
It's
taxing
hard.
at times, especially because you're
Oh
very
yeah.
hyper aware of where everybody is playing on your team, what their roles are, what they have to do. They have to make specific call outs, who's coming to you, what you have to do. Do you have help on a rotation? Are you all alone holding this one section? Can you reposition yourself? There's so many different variables that come into play that's all gut reaction that it's it's definitely mentally taxing as well, just because
Oh
you
yeah,
have
and
to
all,
take
all
in
the
a lot.
you gotta practice like a mother, dude.
Yeah,
And
that's another thing.
then going into Call of Duty is where I tried it again with some really good players. Ended up picking up a little bit. I was like, I could get myself into this. But then school got in the way, college got in the
Hmm.
way, and I'm like, I have time for this. Like, I cannot be doing this. How did that work out for you? Did
I mean,
school get in
granted,
the
at the
way or
time,
things like?
I mean, school definitely in life always got in the way, but it
Yeah.
was one of those things that at the time I made sacrifices. I had
Okay.
to. Like, I wouldn't say I had to, but I wanted to. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that a lot of kids these days, even growing up playing modern esports now, are
Oof.
realizing that if you want to achieve your goal, and if you want to do something and you want to do it well, you're going to have to make sacrifices. A lot of things are going to have to go on the back burner. Like, oh, your friends want to go out one night and they invited you? Can't. You got to scrim. You got
Yep.
practice. You have a tournament coming up in the next couple days. And it's tough sometimes, but you know, I got through it when I was competing. And I think by Battlefield 4, when I stopped, is when I realized too that I just didn't have the time anymore. I had to make things more precedented for me, and
So yeah. So
I
around that
definitely don't
time,
regret it.
I'm sure you heard about other ex-professionals doing YouTube, doing streaming. Is that kind of where it just, oh, hey, maybe that might be good for me after BF4?
I mean, I still credit Rav to it to this day. It was just one of those things that was just like, hey, you know, you were pretty good, and you still are pretty good at Battlefield. Why not try streaming it? And I was like, oh, well, okay, why not? And that was during Battlefield 4. And here I am now 6 years later, still streaming, still enjoying
Yeah.
myself, still having a good time, just for the love of not only the game but of the community that's kind of around, and
Yeah.
just everything else.
When I first started watching Twitch, I didn't watch you way back then. I didn't know what Twitch was. Is that's where you started, right? Twitch or
Twitch,
Justin
I started
TV, I guess it was
right on
called.
Twitch, right as it was coming closer from the disband of Justin TV, because that was when Justin TV was still active.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like right at the end of when Justin TV was being forcefully shut down and then merged back into Twitch. So I think I had the benefit of kind of starting early on, right as Twitch was getting big. But even then, to this day, I'm still obviously a small streamer, and that's fine. I've never had any major intention of being big, but who doesn't want to be a big streamer, right? Um,
You're a big streamer in my eyes.
well, thank you. But that's really what it was. And yeah, I at the time it was just like, yeah, I have some competitive experience. I think I'm pretty good at the game. Maybe other people will enjoy it. And it turns out there were a lot of people who did enjoy it. And I still have subs to this day who are 6 years old that I'm still thankful that they're still around putting up with my ass all these years.
So what was it like streaming Battlefield 4 for the first time? Just casual playing, hopping on with friends, and then the chat starts going. What was that like
I
for
think
you?
it's like that for anybody. It's the same experience for everyone, I feel like, because it's like a steady progress. And even now I'm still progressing. We're trying to learn new things to push onto the stream, where it's
Mhm.
you start with one thing and your quality is so bad. Like for me, I was streaming at like, oh my god, I must have been still on my
Damn.
2500K at the time.
Yeah, you are.
Either way, I was streaming at 2500 bit rate, 30
Woo!
FPS. I only had my logo and a big top left, and I was just playing the game. And eventually, it was one of those things that people like Battlefield enough that came and watched me, and then it got better and better, and I wanted to make my stream quality better and better, and production a little bit better and better, and that's just kind of how it's kind of progressed over the years.
Were you always well, I would think from like a professional player, usually professional players that I watch are either extremely frustrated with things and really like express themselves, or they're like extremely quiet. Are you one of the extremely quiet ones when you were first starting streaming?
I mean, I think it was one of those things that I probably was, but once you realize, I think for me it was a learning process too, because it's like, all right, there are people obviously on this platform who are getting viewers. What are they doing? I still say that's one
Okay.
of the things that people should be doing too.
Oh yeah.
Even today, is if learn what people are doing that makes people want to join your stream and try to apply it in your way while being yourself. And that's what I did. I took a lot of lessons from other people out there who were successful at what they were doing and had viewers, and I put my own twist on it while being myself. And it was just, yeah, at first I was quiet, but then I had people started talking, and I started talking back to chat. And then I started, laughing at my mistakes and trying to bring up topics of conversation with people. And I still do that today. And it's the best part of streaming is just interacting with people and sharing your experiences that I think a lot of people can relate to, that helps bring viewers in. So it was one of those things that I was very pleased when things started picking up. And I'm glad that even today, if it's still not much, I can still share my experiences with others.
Yeah, that's the best part, I think, is you're playing a game that you like, and people are there to experience it with you, and you can talk about it with them live. Is something I always want to do since Battlefield 4. I wanted to start streaming when you would start streaming back in BF4. Man, I just wish I had, the tech really to start doing that. I didn't have, the money to invest in a computer or a webcam. Like those were like so expensive back then.
I barely had the tech, and that's the thing. I barely had the tech to do it, and I had enough just to start on a single stream PC while getting terrible frames, terrible bitrate. It wasn't good, but
I tried it. Dude,
it was something I wanted to do.
I wanted to do it so much, but I couldn't play the game I wanted to play. It was that bad. I was like, I gotta turn it off and then try another time. And then once I saved up enough money, by that time BF1 came out. I'm like, okay, let's try it now.
The one thing I will still chalk up is to, just being the early days of Twitch where everybody had bad PCs too, and the streaming technology wasn't there. It did help. I do attribute it to that, because the cost to entry now for streaming, it's so high for a lot of people. It really is. You have to have the PC to push the frames. People are looking for these 1080p streams, 60 FPS, 9,000 bitrate, webcams with $1,000 cameras and lenses and RGB. Everybody wants that, right? But
it's an investment, man.
It's an investment. It is. And it is a lot of work sometimes just to do the things you want. But if you really like the passion enough of streaming and just the rush of doing it, you're going to do it.
Right.
And that was what it was for me. I had so much fun streaming, and I still have so much fun streaming. Like, I just spent $180 on a capture card for console.
Whoa. Oh yeah, you were playing Luigi's Mansion.
That's right. I'm expanding out.
It looks really good.
But if you love the passion enough, you'll do what it takes to make things look good for the people that want to watch you. So that's one of the things that I will always tell people is be yourself, and maybe people will come and watch you, but just don't blatantly try to copy someone out. Like, if you're going to take inspiration, put your twist on it. Be yourself. That's what it comes down to.
There you go. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining the program. Welcome. I'm here with X Pro Music. Hashtag #MusCK. I'm just kidding. Let's stop. We need to stop that right now. Again, this is the only Battlefield talk show on Twitch. I wanted to start this show as my own little spin, as we're talking about music. I wanted to start because people used to do this kind of thing, and it really, it just, let's just say this: Battlefield is dying, okay? And I'm like, I've been with Battlefield since almost the very beginning, you know, like you have. And at this point, when we have like a game like Battlefield 5 come out and the player base is low, there's not a lot of updates anymore. There's unknown amounts of like knowledge of where Battlefield's going to be next year. Like, are we going to see another Battlefield?
We're really in a big time of uncertainty. That's for sure. It's,
and guess what?
There's been theories.
Yeah, and guess what? Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's having podcasts. They used to, like right when the beginning of Battlefield 5 came out. The Battlefield did their own podcast and reveal you know, new game modes or new everything. Really. There's patch coming out. Here's a live stream. Let's talk about it. And then
the last live stream that I think they did was right when patch 5.2 hit, and they're like, "Oh, look, everything's fine. This is in-house testing. Look at all of these kills our own developers are getting. Everything's fine." And that's fine on a dev basis, but you're not the whole community that's playing the game. You know, you're going to have varying skill levels, and when you have varying skill levels that can test your game to the fullest extent, you're going to realize what's totally broken and what isn't. And in the case of 5.2, it was bad. Like,
this is triggering me.
It's a triggering for a lot of people. Not only you, but for me too.
Okay. Well, let's start at the beginning. Bad. Let's start at the beginning here. You become a Battlefield EA game changer, and they fly your ass out to gamescom in Germany, where you're gonna try Battlefield for the first time?
Battlefield 5 for the first time since the alpha. Yes, since the alpha. So that we played the alpha where it was open, and this was right when they were releasing Rotterdam for the first time. So they're like, okay, we have made progress, and here's Rotterdam. So that's what they flew us out to test out, was basically right as Rotterdam was about to drop for everybody to play.
I had a video here from Neebs Gaming, actually. Neebs, you see Neebs? And they put out a video of them doing the Gamescom thing back in August 2018. Wow.
Just those people. I'm like, for those who haven't met him, Thick44 is like the biggest sweetheart you will ever meet. And he is just such a kind person. He was such a cool dude. I got to meet so many of these people that you see online, and you get to meet them for the first time and hear what they're really like. Are they the same as their persona? And yeah, some people are definitely the same, and some people, I would say, you know, they have to put on a different face for what they do, but they're relatively the same people.
Here's the cool things that he said about you here. Here, listen along here.
I didn't care. You didn't care.
And normally when we go to these events, we play against really, really good players. And not that I didn't play against good players, but there were two factors in this. Factor number one, they weren't always good players sometimes. Sometimes we played against press.
Oh.
Which you're probably going to see a lot of reviews on Battlefield 5 saying it's hard to stay alive. The second factor is I squatted up with 3 guys the whole week. The same 3 guys. Number one, you know him, Pony Lion.
Oh, yeah, I like Pony.
Pony's a good player. Yeah, he's a good player.
Good player, good people.
And then 2 former competitive players by the name of Ravik and Music. Music probably being the best Battlefield player on Twitch right now.
Hey, if you're going to have teammates, those sound like the teammates to have.
I had bodyguards the whole time.
That was very high praise from
No one could kill me.
My fun is just going to be great.
Yeah.
See, that's what we do when we send people to events. Like even like Duralius and Simon, who are bad at games. Just set them up with those guys. They'll be fine.
By the way.
Yeah, see? And, you know, high praise indeed. That was Thick44, right? The one I was talking to?
Yeah, that was Thick. He was talking to, I think, Duralius, who was there. But either way, Thick was just, oh my gosh, one of the nicest people I think you'll ever meet. And it really was true for that whole, we were there. We were just playing the same squad. We would go at the same time. We're like, all right, we just want consistency. and we're gonna play. And we did, and it was a lot of fun. And this is when we first started speculating too, as he talks about in his video. We're like, is the ZH really a two shot? Like, this is the first time experienced the ZH, and we're like, is this
Look at it now.
Yeah, and it's now a part of the game, and you're used to it. But at the time, we weren't used to big two-shot rifles, especially for scouts. We're like, this is going to be abused. And yeah, I would say it's still heavily abused at all, but it's definitely up there in terms of top tier usage by some people, for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, look how different the beta looks. It's crazy.
It's very different.
Yeah, all the icons that weren't there's a lot of buggy stuff that happened in this game. I got a whole bunch of stuff to show you here. But yeah, that was one thing of you know, Neebs Gaming talking about you. I found randomly. I was like, holy shit, it's talking about music there. Best player in Battlefield right now.
I totally forgot he even said that, and I still will credit that that's a very high praise from him. And you know, there are people obviously out there who are probably streaming now who are way better than me, but it's whatever. There's always going to be someone better than you, but even hearing that from him, that was very kind.
Yeah. This one's from Gamescom. You were playing the beta here, and I mean, look at the UI, totally different. And then yeah, just like the revive icons were all really wacky, really hard to see sometimes. Like, I think you'll notice, yeah, some of them are very weird.
There are a lot of missing things, like those med boxes, ammo boxes from that flag were gone.
Yeah, when you were playing this beta, were you concerned about the full release of the game? Or were like, oh, this is going to be good?
Anybody who plays the game has a concern. I think the big thing was we were going off of the alpha, because a lot of us, you know, we played the alpha. The alpha was it was STG 44 Fest. Everybody has an STG in the alpha. And so we're like, okay, how's the STG? That was it for a lot of us. We're like, but how's the STG?
Right.
And STG turned out to be a little bit better than it was.
Really good.
And it was so. Yeah, we had a lot of concerns, obviously, going in with any Battlefield, because you're basing it off of previous games like BF1, BF4, everything you've played before Frostbite engine-wise. You're looking for legacy bugs that exist. There's just a bunch of other things. My intention not only was just to play the game, but to see, you know, what truly was broken, because you're going to experience those things when you play it.
Right.
But it was very different, and I think this is at the time where the EMP was still really, really good.
So what was like one of the main pieces of feedback during the beta that you gave the developers?
There was a lot of feedback from a lot of people, because what they would do was they would bring everybody, once it was all over, they'd have feedback sessions, and they'd have different groups of feedback sessions, and they'd bring them into a room, and, you know, there'd be Jeff and there would be Adam, and they'd be talking to, you know, each other. Adam be taking notes, and Jeff's bringing up counterpoints, and people are, you know, raising their hands and bringing awareness. And at the time, I think I only made one real decent suggestion, which was just the fact that they advertised, you know, oh, you could shoot through certain objects, right? A lot of us were like, oh, so there's wall bangs.
Yeah.
And then we all know how wall bangs turned out. But at the time, it was like, I'm used to BC2, where you can wall bang through anything practically, because it's projectile based and material based. This is wood, I can shoot through that. This is corrugated tin, I can shoot through that. And in the sense, that was my thinking. So I was like, oh, there's a wooden plank right here, and you're saying I can wall bang in this game, but I can't shoot through it. Why? And you know, I brought that up, and they're like, okay, yeah, we'll make a note of that. And another one I think I gave, which was kind of a stupid one in hindsight, mainly because this was going off of them kind of getting close to the backtrack of cosmetics. And at the time where everybody was going like, what is going on, you know, from the original trailer, why is Blue Kratos here? But everyone was talking about that, and I was bringing up the whole customization thing, and I was like, well, if you're gonna have these sights, do we really need to have like pink sights and all this? And I realized at the time, like, yeah, I want customization in, but I think I was still leaning towards, my thought process was, I want my immersion of a World War II game again, because this is the first World War II game we've had since 1943. So I was like, I want my full World War II immersion. And at the same time, yeah, they were keeping their different colored sights and everything. And I'm glad that they have it in the game now for those who, especially are the colorblind, who can't see specific colors.
Yeah,
but,
that's just part of gameplay and all that. Yeah, but people talk about authentic stuff. I mean, it's huge on Reddit. Like, oh man, they're
everybody.
fixing
everybody wants different authenticity, and other people were just like, I like the absurdity. And my problem is it still falls into the same category of what's currently going on, which is flip-flopping. There seems to be a lot of flip-flopping back and forth currently, and I don't know why.
When you were at Gamescom, did it seem like, oh hey, we want to make this absurd or make this like a
No, it's
like
generally
they really
like
wanted to make World War II game?
treating it. Yes, they were treating it like it's, Battlefield 1. It's a World War II game. They're not concerned about your cosmetics or how did the cosmetics look or all this and that. They're interested in the gameplay at this point, and I applaud them for that, because that's what they should be interested in, and what they should be focused on is the gameplay. Does the gameplay work currently enough, or what needs to be changed? And I applaud them definitely for that, because of course
I can see that in the alpha and the beta. Dude, people like that because the gameplay was so different, unique, and it was a focus.
There was a lot of developers.
Today is not the focus. That's not the
focus. Oh no. Again, it all goes back into there's a lot of flip-flopping. But at the time for Gamescom, there were devs there, not only aside from the current community managers, who are wonderful people, by the way, Jeff Braddock and Part Welsh. They're very lovely people.
Oh, I've heard.
But yeah, they're very nice to meet, and Jeff's a character. But what it comes down to is they're really just the messengers, right? They're there to listen to what you have to say and give it back to the devs. They have no influence when it comes to gameplay. They are just the middleman. And because there were actually some devs there, you never really got to interact with them at all, because most of the time if you're there, you're interacting with the community managers and what they're taking your feedback with. So you can't give direct feedback entirely verbatim to a developer. You're basically just getting what I didn't find it odd, no, because it makes sense that a community manager would be there to interact with the community, but I think I would say it was
a game changer would be considered community? I mean,
yes. I mean, again, it's one of those things that you're brought in, I guess, mainly because you have an audience, and for the most part, you have some influence some way. I don't know. I can't speak fully on the whole concept of why it works of game changers. I'm not entirely certain on it, but it's enough to the point where I like to believe that I had enough to offer in terms of my background of playing the games throughout multiple different years and competitive experience that I can bring some sort of insight to it. But it's one of those things, again, that you wish that developers were there in the process, listening to the feedback directly, because you want to give the feedback directly to them, not the community manager. So it's like having a surrogate that's taking your words and then kind of can't give the full picture in between, is what it feels like. And I know that the community managers are doing their best. Absolutely. That's their jobs. But when it comes down to the developers now and how the game is currently, it seems like there is something going on, especially in the recent rumblings of developers leaving, in the higher ups being switched around. It feels like the game is somehow being manipulated by a higher power that, and this is pure speculation and conjecture, by the way. I have no proof of this. This is just from what I'm seeing. It feels like there's some puppet master pulling the strings as to what needs to be done instead of what should be done. And as a player and everybody else, you kind of feel that in the game, because I'm pretty sure that a lot of people out there, especially, oh God, who was I can't remember the developer. What was it after the first time to kill change? He's like, we never want to do this again. We never want to do another time to kill change again. And then 5.2 comes along.
The name.
All I know is I think he left DICE at some point. He was one of the people who left, and he was like,
recently,
I think he came out with a tweet saying, he's like, trust me, we tried to fight against this.
Yeah.
It's like, at least I tried to fight against it. So it was it kind of leads more again to that speculation of who's really pulling the strings for this game and what's happening, especially for players, because we're the ones who suffer. We're the ones that play the game. We can't control what's being done, and it sucks.
Wasn't TTK one of the main focuses of gameplay here on these betas and these alphas?
Time to kill definitely is one of those things that you're noticing from the start, right? Because like I said, we were worried more about like STG time to kill because that thing was a monster in the alpha.
Right.
We were just at this point testing every single weapon, and in this clip you're showing, I was just testing medic to see how medic felt, and medic felt pretty good at this time.
Yeah, at that time. Oh baby.
And then it kind of changed to where I think they were straying away from medic, and I still say they kind of backed themselves into a hole with this one, where they were trying to stray away from the old medic metas of BF4, where everybody would run around with your AEK compensator stubby grip, and now they didn't want to have that sort of power in medic anymore. They wanted it to be more up close and personal. But at the time, the EMP felt pretty good in the beta, but nowadays the entirety of the SMG class has just changed, where it doesn't feel super great, or rather certain guns feel way too strong and others still feel underpowered. It's just a weird mess.
Yeah, I have a strange theory about Battlefield as a whole, and kind of like as a blunder, to say the least, where the game didn't sell very well. It didn't sell in the UK very well when it comes to actual physical copies. That stat that they always have, that I kind of always find a little bit meaningless nowadays because everything's digital now. But let's just say they didn't make enough or a lot of money off of this game, right? And they needed to buy time or something, because it looked like they wanted to go all in with Battlefield 5 with the first few patches and make their way to the Pacific content, like all in. Everything was changing all the time. There were huge UI fixes, and then the TTK stuff came up in around Christmas time for the first one. Everyone's like, no, you can't do that. This is not what we wanted. We already tested this. This is what we wanted.
I kind of want to give a sidebar there, is that when the first time to kill change happened, I was actually one of the few people who didn't mind, believe it or not. I did not mind the time to kill change but granted, I will always say I look at games differently because of my competitive background. So I'm looking at it probably more from a competitive standpoint than a casual perspective. I'm very hyper aware of that. But for me, it was like, headshot modifiers at the time for that first time to kill weren't changed. So headshots mattered a bit more, and it felt good because it was like, oh, you're rewarding people who are aiming for the head. This feels great. But a lot of people were really upset because, it was more a test to the fact that some people weren't realizing that, and they were going, oh, people are bullet sponges. And that's, I could see it. But for me, I still didn't really think it was that bad and didn't really need that sort of outlash. I still have a big gripe with the Reddit hive mind, as I call it, where one person goes, I don't like thing, and then another person snowballs and goes, I don't like thing.
Rabble.
Yeah, so everybody kind of snowballs onto it of also not liking thing, but I think for the last one, it definitely was warranted because it was a whole overhaul in 5.2 that just kind of ruined it for a lot of people. But I don't think the first one really was worth the rabble.
No, I again, back to my theory. I think it was them buying time for something. Something was not right, and they needed to do something. Like EA or whoever the higher ups were like, we got to do this because our churn or our numbers, whatever. They just made up something.
It was definitely due to the fact that the game probably wasn't doing very well, specifically in the point network wise as well. Gameplay wise, it was still having, your launch problems of ping and getting shot around corners and everything.
Yeah.
I still believe that what they did for the first time to kill was a knee-jerk reaction in the attempt of trying to mitigate that feeling of being shot around corners. So you take an extra bullet. but obviously didn't
they had
pan
to
out.
fix that, and there was a whole time to death thing came up. That was because a lot of the main guns when the game came out killed you like in 1 frame or whatever, and that was a big thing they had to solve. Luckily they kind of solved it with certain things. I still get 1 frame by certain guns, but
oh, I do too.
Besides the point, it's just I feel like business wise it wasn't, and this was a live service game. Like, hey, we cannot.
This was definitely DICE's first attempt at what they call the live service. And for what they call a live service, it's more like a drop service is what it is. A drop from the faucet.
It's an illusion that you are getting things every week, every day, every month.
The current, yes. The big problem is the current tier upgrades, or what they have for the Tides of War, which is just kind of funny in my eyes, because now it's like, well, we've run out of content to give, so here's a tier upgrade. So
again, buying time. I think this game, when it comes to putting actual real money into it, where it comes to making maps, is where the big money is, right? It costs a lot to make a map, and this new a new Tides of War mission or new factions or those kinds of things cost a lot of money. Yeah. And I think they had to cancel literally everything that was after the Pacific. I'm sure they had tons of plans for this game. You can see it all over through the code, but now it's like dead silent, and it's been dead silent since they stopped working on the UI, and when we heard about the 5v5 game mode being canceled around that time.
Definitely a lot of things that feel like it ties into one big thing.
But a lot of people don't know about that or don't realize, because everyone's like, oh my god, like, we're going to get the Russian expansion soon. We're going to get the, the invasion of Normandy and Europe and all that. Mm-hmm. At this point, dude, I'm not seeing that like it was for the Pacific.
I'm going to be right with you. I think the big thing that people right now, unfortunately, is for most people who play this game need to realize is that I'm pretty sure a lot of future content is gone and scrapped. I don't believe for a second that we're probably going to see another major theater of war. If we did, I would honestly be shocked.
I would be shocked. Yes,
I'd be pleasantly surprised, but shocked.
Well, I'm worried about Battlefield 6. Straight up, I'm worried about that. Like,
right.
All the money
going
should be
back
going
to what you said earlier in terms of them scrapping certain things and things going dead silent. I think a lot of it also had to do with another game that came out, if you recall, called Star Wars Battlefront 2. And Star Wars Battlefront 2 is also under DICE's mitigation of, fixing the game itself. And that was its own massive debacle and still holds the record of the highest downvote on Reddit, because who doesn't like to feel a sense of pride and accomplishment?
I felt like that game was a framework for all EA first-person shooters or action games. Battlefront 2 was the template how we wanted to move forward.
Battlefront is actually really interesting, and I still bring this up because with the first Battlefront game that came out, the remake, if you look at how that game plays and then you go to Battlefield 1, you realize, wow, there's a lot of reused assets from Battlefront to here.
Oh yeah,
like
the
when
UI
you see
in the beta. Oh man,
the UI, you see the stormtroopers running in Battlefront 1, and then you look at the soldiers running in Battlefield 1. You're like, oh, there's definitely reused assets, but this is nothing new. Anybody with an eye can tell that there are certain reused assets from DICE game to DICE game because it saves time and money.
Oh yeah,
but I think it's going to show that most people nowadays are starting to realize that too, not only in the game itself, but I think, as I've been a total advocate of this for years, DICE really does, I think at this point, need to find a way to make the Frostbite engine not so terrible the way it is, or EA really needs to just allow them to work on something different in a different engine wise.
I feel like that's what they're doing right now. feel like
I would
that's
love to believe that they're using a different engine, but I don't believe
that'd be
they
cool.
are.
No, I don't think they are either, but I would like them to.
The big thing that you can probably take away from all of this too is that Battlefront 2 had the luxury of being tied to the Disney license and having that Disney money, and the fact that you're appealing at not only a convenient time where your Star Wars new trilogy is releasing films every year, every other year. You're building a fan base of people who love Star Wars, and Star Wars is just like a pop culture icon. The name is everywhere. Everybody knows that. And so people are going to pay more attention to the name Star Wars than a Battlefield game. So if one of your Star Wars games is broken and has created a massive scandal of its own, and you have a Battlefield 5 game or World War II game that's also broken, which one are you going to fix first? You're going to go for the one that brings in the more players, which means more copies. And again, speculation and conjecture. That's what it feels like. But it really is, as a Battlefield fan, it is kind of disappointing to see what feels like now is a skeleton crew working on the game. And it just kind of stinks as a player because you're just stuck in this funk of playing the same things over and over again. And it's getting to kind of how I felt with Battlefield 4 towards the end, where you're in this, you're like, oh, I want to play, but it's the same things again and again and again.
Yeah, we were talking about whether we should bring premium back. I've been talking with a lot of people about that.
I agree.
You have any?
I agree. I do. I've thought about that for a long, long time. The big thing that people obviously don't like about premium is that, you know, there's a paywall behind it and you're separating your audience.
I hate that part of it.
Yeah, again, I think everybody doesn't like that. However, with it, it goes to show that there is a promise of something that is actually coming. And we haven't had that issue, at least in Battlefield 3 or 4 or 1, because every time we paid for premium, we got our premium content. Whereas now it was like, oh, look, I paid $80 for the game and I got a red demon skin on my KE7. You guys want to see my $80 skin? That's it. It kind of stinks because premium really did offer a lot of content that you could at least see what was coming. Whereas now we're just like, if it comes, it comes.
I feel like they tried that initially, and they're like, everyone was asking for a roadmap, and then they brought a roadmap. And then they quickly learned that they didn't have the time for it. So a lot of things were delayed. A lot of things that were, when the game first came out, like there were war stories that weren't finished yet. There were, practice range was gone. Vehicle customization was gone. You couldn't even put skins on your tanks. Many things were missing from that, and that was just a bad look right away. And, and that's coming off of Deluxe Edition. It's just mistakes and mistakes are just made constantly. They try to rework it, and then they couldn't actually go with it, or they couldn't fulfill that promise. So things got delayed, which made things worse. Then a TTK changes, makes everybody mad, and then there's more delays. It's like constantly not good. So
no,
it's just, we're at that stage right now. Is, can they make a comeback? I think they can.
The big promise.
Are they putting their money in where their mouth is? Are they gonna actually make the next game where EA was talking about that? Can they make that something?
Well, it's like you said earlier, the big thing is that we have already basically, because of EA conference calls and them talking about, okay, we're looking at another Battlefield fiscal year of 2022, which means the game's coming out 2021. So at this point next year, we're wondering, how long has this been going on for now, this game? 2 years now? Or is it 3?
Maybe it's I hope.
Probably 2 years now, and it's going to be coming up on 3, I guess I should say, because of 2021. But within this next year, they definitely have to do something, is what it feels like, to get people to keep playing. Otherwise, once again, we're already in a trickle down effect where there probably will be nothing left, and there'll probably be another hardline situation for
Oof.
PC, and then you're just going to have everybody who goes back to BF1 or 4 or whatever their poison is. But I do agree that currently there is nothing really engaging for players right now to keep playing. The Tides of War is kind of a joke in the sense of, oh, log in, you know, and get the tier reward for something that you may have already done if you play the game a lot. And then there's something like, oh, log in on this day and get company coin. And spend it on what? that's the
I think that's
thing.
all they can do at this point at home. Like, what can we? Any tech that we have in right now? Oh, we can give them company coin. That's easy.
And then we can talk about, of course, the disaster that's Firestorm. That was literally a knee-jerk slap-on reaction of the popularity of battle royales. It was like, ah, yes, we're making a battle royale to compete with other battle royale. Come join our battle royale, fellow kids. And it's
but the DICE devs are like, hey, wait a second, we don't have time for this shit. And they're like, well, we got Criterion, they can do it. It's like, all right, fuck it, let's go. And
either way, it's a waste of assets and money, because it feels like that could have been spent by taking your current game, giving it to Criterion, and be like, okay, is there something you can make to add on currently to our already existing game and not a battle royale? And I
they
think
could have made the Russian Theater of War. They could have done that.
They could have pulled something like what DICE LA did, which is, you know, you had DICE LA that worked on previous expansions, but DICE LA, of course, now has been entirely scrapped and rebranded and now works under Vince Zampella. And so
that makes me so mad thinking about that right now.
I'm happy for Vince Zampella and where that company will probably go with making different IPs, but I do agree in the sense of Battlefield, it suffered hard because they couldn't. It now lies squarely on the shoulders of DICE Sweden. Like that's really what it is. DICE Sweden now, the ball's in their court, and they got to do something with the game currently that will make people enjoy the game again, or at least do something that the Pacific did again. And it needs to happen during this upcoming year, or you're going to see some major consequences in the player base for sure.
Do you like battle royales?
I enjoy battle royales, yes. However, I do not believe that Firestorm was a good idea. It wasn't. If they had to here's where I will say is where it could have done well. It was under a bunch of hypothetical scenarios. One, they had made the game separately and not tied it to the Battlefield name. If it was just a Frostbite-based game in a different setting, free to play, not tied to the Battlefield name, it probably would have done well.
Literally every EA Game Changers feedback when it comes to Battle Royale, and they just did not listen to you guys. This is amazing.
But another thing that is a problem is just how irresponsible it came to actually fixing Firestorm. Like the loot system was awful. It just exploded out of bodies, and you're spending a good 1 minute looking around like, is this good?
Where's my
armor? Can I get this?
It's in the ground.
I need armor. I need how many people to control a tank? I need to go. It wasn't fun. It felt clunky. And another problem as well, which I think is the big kicker, of course, that probably everybody brings up, it had the unfortunate reality of being released literally at the same time as Apex Legends. Woo! Something that was already being worked on for years, and it was just like, oh yes, a free-to-play battle royale in the Titanfall universe with Titanfall controls, a game that literally everybody loves, Titanfall.
Holy shit!
So it
no advertisement.
Really
just came out.
Really did not help its case at all. It kind of just put metaphorical nails in coffins one after another. And currently, I'd say we've buried Firestorm 6 feet deep. But it's always interesting to see people on Reddit who talk about like, oh, but I loved it. I love playing this game. And unfortunately for me, I'm going, how? How are you loving this and playing this with what people? That's the astonishing part for me. It's like we saw in patch notes a while ago. It's like, oh yeah, we lowered the start to 2 people. I'm like, 2 people?
It's kind of embarrassing, yes.
Only 2 people to start a Firestorm match in that big of a map? How big are your circles? You're expecting people like what? It's a shock, truly, that assets felt
what else
burned
are you gonna do? What else are you
from
gonna
the
do?
core game.
Can't do anything else. There's no money more to put it in.
I understand what they were doing. From a business standpoint, it's a gamble because you're trying to make the audience come to you. You're trying to steal the audience of another game. That's how modern games work. You make shooter, we want shooter's audience. That's what it is.
It's kind of almost like you were given the green light to do this and to make it work, create it. And then a day later, you get an email saying, "Oh, hey, we're going to shut you down, but you can put out what you got." Like, that's what it felt like to me. Like, why isn't this game getting a hot fix right now? Hello? Any of you out there? Like, you're paying these streamers millions of dollars probably to play your Firestorm, and it's in this completely unfinished state, and then we are expecting, oh, they're gonna patch all that, no problem. I mean, this is Battlefield's Royale. Like, you can't fuck this up. Like, this is your chance if you ever want to do it again. And nothing ever happened. So I felt like they got that email. It's like, hey, we got Apex coming or whatever, and we're putting all of our cards on that. You guys need to stop. Like, that's what it felt like to me.
It's just a lot of different higher ups that again goes back to the speculation of pulling the puppet strings of going, okay, this was a failure, shut it down. And
it must be so frustrating
from
as
a developer from a developer standpoint, even from what we've heard, if it's true about like someone saying, oh, we didn't want to change the time to kill, but if someone is literally pulling your strings and making you do it, that must suck as a developer to feel like you have no control over your game and you're just mindlessly typing this code going, oh no, this is not good. Like, if you could see writing on the walls, that's got to be the worst feeling as a developer. And I give my hats off to all of the developers who made this game, man. Like,
oh yeah,
even through all of the bullshit this game has gone through, they've still made a decent product that I've enjoyed, and they have done a good job that way. But I will say it's not perfect. And for the people that are pulling their strings, if they are pulling their strings, I do feel for them, man. I really do.
So no more Firestorms for Battlefield 6, right?
I think they've pretty much confirmed at this point that they can't do that again. If it's not confirmed for them now, I hope they realize that they can't do that again. And if they are, don't associate it with Battlefield and make it free to play.
There you go.
Like, you can't have it tied to your name. But people will play Battlefield for Battlefield, not for a battle royale.
So, just changing the subject here pretty much. What do you wish Battlefield had when it comes to maybe like certain types of weapons for World War II setting? I mean, maps or vehicles, maybe a gadget.
I think
what do you wish it had?
Obviously, for me, and I think it's because I grew up during the time where World War II games were super popular, I want my iconic maps. I do want Normandy. I do want that. And I know a lot of people out there like, oh, I don't want that. I do. I think a lot of people out there would love to see iconic maps again. That was one of the big things that I think is kind of a huge miss on DICE's part for this game, is that they wanted to go for the aspect of unknown battles or battles people may not have known. And that's fine and dandy, but most people who have studied any sort of history want to partake in those large battles. People want to play in Normandy. People want to do Market Garden. People want to do Battle of the Bulge. You know, people want to do that because it actually plays into an immersion factor of enjoyment.
Yeah, but DICE hates doing that. You can see in all their games, everything has to be different from the previous one.
And that's
I hate that.
That's like, definitely a problem for me. Like, I'm okay if you want to keep unknown battles, that's fine. But I don't think you could ignore major ones too. Like,
those are the money makers, right?
Exactly. And I feel that's what they were kind of disregarding too, is that you're going to get people who will probably play a map just for Normandy. They'll pay $60 for it. You never know. But it's definitely something I wish that they had done, because for some of the maps that are out there now,
Yeah.
it's some of them feel really weak and some feel pretty good. Like Eris is wonderful in my opinion as a map, and then you get the complete opposite of a map like, oh gosh, what's a good one?
Storm?
Panzerstorm, that's a good one. Yeah, you get the complete opposite of that, where it kind of tries to be like Eris, but it's like, here's Eris, but let's scale it up 10 times and only for vehicles. Also, screw your infantry play. That's what it feels like.
We have a question here from the chat. From Tombstone Mercenary, how much damage has been done to the goodwill for the Battlefield franchise, and what would they have to do with Battlefield 6 to try and repair the damage done? I feel like we covered a little bit about that. I don't think Battlefield's over with. I mean, the fact that EA comes out for their Q1 and they say, dude, we're gonna have another Battlefield game, and that means like, hey, they're still invested in DICE and Battlefield, so we have nothing to worry about. And I'm like on my stream saying, oh yeah, you guys think the next Battlefield game's gonna be like, you know, regular old Battlefield with conquest and vehicle warfare and all this good stuff. I'm like, dude, what if the next Battlefield game is a VR game? What are you gonna think about then?
It's one of those things that it's shown on the subject of at least VR. It's not necessarily a bad thing to reinvent the wheel. In the case of, well, look at Valve. Half-Life Alyx just came out. And Half-Life Alyx is that's why their reasoning when you read up behind it, which is very fascinating, as to why they don't release Half-Life games on a regular basis, is because their entire goal for Half-Life games was they wanted to release a game that pushed the game with technology further. That was their goal. So with,
it's kind of like James Cameron. It's like James Cameron mentality.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm not going to release a fucking movie until I got the technology to release it. And
I'm not going to make a movie until I could take my submarine and touch the bottom of the world. That's what he wants to do. That's
why there's no Avatar 2 right now.
Yes, it's the same thing for Valve, in the sense of they're going, okay, we made Half-Life 1 and then we pushed it further with Source, and now we're pushing it further with Source 2 but in VR. And now it makes you wonder, okay, what are they going to push next technology wise? But in the case of Battlefield, obviously we don't see that. We see pushes in the engine of Frostbite, and we can see it looks shinier every year. I'll attest to that.
Yeah,
it looks shinier,
beautiful,
but it still has the same problems of the engine. It's basically taking
those legacy bugs.
I always say, you can have a turd and you can polish it and make it look really shiny and really nice, but it's still a turd, and that's the thing. And I do believe that Frostbite, it needs to find its way out the door. I think it's time that a nice change of engine would do them good, not only for the player base, but for developers, specifically because they could bring in different developers that have a fresh set of eyes and can actually try to innovate certain things. I'm not saying go overboard and reinvent the wheel. I'm saying, but take what you have, but just make it shinier and better to play.
I think EA has something up their sleeves. You got new consoles coming out, brand new with new technology in it. Look out, right?
Well, the 2010 SSDs, yes.
Then you have cross-platform, which is probably almost guaranteed in the next Battlefield game at this point.
Oh, not looking forward to that.
Frostbite, cross-platform, bruh. Like, it sounds like a nightmare to me. So maybe they're not working, or maybe they made a new Frostbite engine that works well with that. You know, maybe they do have the tech and they're just not showing it yet.
Possibly.
That's what I can hope.
It is possible, but I do think that we probably are going to see another Frostbite game. The one thing that I can probably almost be certain on, and I'll eat my hat if it isn't, is that they will probably make the next Battlefield modern. So many people I know did not buy this current game because of it being set in World War II. So many people are going, oh, World War II again. Oh, no. Yeah, here I am like, I love World War II games. Yeah, but no, everybody apparently, when you see on the Reddit hive mind, Battlefield 4 apparently was the best FPS ever invented, graced by God himself. So they want a game that's very similar to how Battlefield 4 plays. And so I think this time, because higher ups are probably paying attention, they probably are going to go back to the modern style. And yeah, that's okay, I guess. I really couldn't care. But I think that the modern style, especially a Battlefield 4, is going to sell more copies for them. And that's probably what they will try to do.
True. Well, let's see. We can hope for the best. I think they got something up their sleeves.
I have no doubt with that. No.
Yeah, don't ever underestimate DICE when it comes to new shit that people have never seen before. They always want to be in the front when it comes to technology and artistry, sound effects. They're always there first, and then Call of Duty comes running along and trying to, reap all the benefits. But
right.
I got some clips that I want to show off to the audience that are still here. Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming by. This is the Battlefield Show, the only Battlefield talk show on Twitch. I'm here with mus1CK, also Twitch partner streamer and what would you say, professional gamer, I guess you can say.
Yeah, that's really what it is. For Battlefield, at least.
Yeah, for Battlefield. So I have some old clip of mus1CK spectating some of the new players in Battlefield 4 and what it's kind of like as a new player in Battlefield 5. Here, check these out. These are actually pretty funny. Here, watch this.
Coming for him. Calling it right now. Look at the Christmas
I'm going into free cam for this one. It's gonna be glorious.
This is the guy that's in the back.
3, 2, 1.
And one
This
of your
is
friends.
my old teammate Negativo, who was just sniped by this guy.
Yeah,
he sent the cruise missile right to him. Well deserved, if you ask.
I've done that so many times. I miss stuff like that. Even though it's part of the commander, we kind of have that now in, squad leader call-ins. I think the cruise missile or some kind of World War II type cruise missile, like maybe a smaller V1, I don't know, some sort of rocket that can pinpoint a specific player or a tank that's camping in the back. I think it would be a great deterrent, but we never saw that kind of thing.
I think
was always
that
hoping...
Commander it was good of them to try to bring it back.
Yeah,
in Battlefield 4. It was an attempt. I don't think it turned out well because it wasn't. As somebody who played Battlefield 2, that is what I view as a commander. Commanders are the people who will be on the battlefield, but can also bring up their map and control it from there. But in reality, what you really did get was commanders who would go prone in their main and do whatever they could there. But that's still another thing I wish would come back as well, was because you could go in their main.
You want commander mode, huh? You want commander back?
Yeah, I want old BF2 commander mode back. Definitely want old BF2 commander.
I could see so many problems with the old commander coming back because there's a lot of dumb people out there. Like, I'm gonna show you in some clips. Actually, let me show you this, and I'll go into what I think about commander mode here.
All right, okay.
Check this out here real quick. Some
Come
more
on,
campers.
don't do that to me, guy. Do you really want to live forever up on a bridge? Like, oh, that's gonna drive me insane. You know what? I'm just gonna walk away. I'm gonna walk away. Actually, you're right. I could V1 these fools.
That's right, new 4.
Hold on a minute.
Oh baby.
Enjoy that, my friend. Just gonna give you that little warning shot.
Class.
Oh lordy, coming! You would be surprised that this is what you encounter in a normal game. This is everyday stuff. I'm only gonna get one. Watch. Nope, got them all.
That's the way to do it, man.
Oh.
And that was, I mean, I don't even know if you can still do that. You could probably still do that in the current version of the game. But, I mean, you're going to have commanders in, let's say, BF6. If it's like BF2, right? You're gonna need a mutiny system first off. Like you have to,
Well,
because they're gonna start
absolutely.
running around and start playing, and everyone like on the team's going like, bro, like you cannot be running around playing with us. You gotta command, dude. Like that's your job. You know?
That's the thing with BF2 Commander. You had your good commanders, people who would actually do their job, and then you had, of course, people who were bad commanders, and you had the same thing in BF4. It's a give and take, but just a totally different play style.
Give it to the boomers. Give it to the boomers. They'll do the job.
The big thing with Battlefield 2 Commander up to 2142 was that, yes, a good commander would probably sit in his main, but he would be doing his job. And one of the best parts about that system was if you were on the opposite team and you somehow managed to get around all of these people and go to the main, you could blow up their ordnance so they couldn't call any more missiles, or you could just go for the guy's tags.
Protect the assets. That was his job. Part of his job is protect the assets, make sure no one C4 them.
That's another thing that's been gone from Battlefield for years, was collecting people's tags where it actually meant something. The last game that really probably meant something was Bad Company 2 for collecting tags. Or maybe you could argue BF3, but nowadays it doesn't really mean anything.
It's too complicated, music. I mean,
yeah, the technology's not there. I get it. Technology we had years ago, it's not there.
We got things like Outpost coming out like for this week's, and a lot of new players are like, what do I do? So they grab their sniper rifle and then like sit in the back and try to hit headshots. Like, I don't care, you know? And they probably all have like 170 ping or whatever, which is, man, what are your morning streams like? I know you've been playing Battlefield in the morning. That must be
I try to stream when I can in the weekends on mornings, which I'm probably going to do tomorrow if I can. But even more recently, the big problem is just the amount of Asian people that are currently in NA servers, simply because the Asian region is simply overpopulated with an abundance of cheaters now, which I can only assume because we don't have anybody who's straight up coming and telling us that we have this many people coming from these Asian regions playing in here. Either we just don't know because no one's telling us. This is all assumption. And it's a problem. You don't know if the Play Now is throwing them in here. You don't know if they're actively looking for these NA servers. It's a huge problem. And there is a big thing you feel with ping in this game. If you have a high ping,
it's different.
There's a weird sweet spot that you can hit. There's a sweet spot where you can hit where you're lagging, but you're not. And you get a lot of these people who kind of hit that sweet spot sometimes, and you can feel it. And it's very frustrating to play against these players. And the way I describe it, it's like you going into the hyperbolic time chamber and training yourself just to hit these people who are somehow in the past and in the future at the same time.
He's in the future. Yeah.
It's
impossible sometimes.
It's a struggle sometimes, man. And it's really apparent nowadays in NA servers.
I was very sad, but it made sense when the community managers told us they're not going to have ping limiters or anything like that, to where if you have a high ping, you can't play in the server kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like region locks. I understood why they would never add a region lock to Battlefield 5. I mean, it makes sense. There's not enough players, really.
Right.
You don't want to
That's
just
the
leave
thing.
them out. And it's really sad news when you hear that they got to get rid of regional servers like, you know, Saudi Arabia or South Africa. That was really sad because there's like probably a few thousand Battlefield players there.
Their reasoning was interesting talking about it.
That was
the way
that was weird too.
He worded it very interestingly enough to the point where it made you think, because he worded it, I believe it was people in Saudi Arabia were technically already joining European servers rather than their own region servers. But that wasn't enough context to tell, is this the Play Now system that's doing this, where they literally hit Play Now, and does it throw them into Europe? Or is it the fact that they are actually going to the server browser and picking a different region? So if we had the data or the understanding to explain to others as to why that's happening, I'm pretty sure more people would either, you know, be upset about it or have a totally rational understanding. But right now we just don't know because we're kept in the dark.
Yeah, I recently put up a video of like new player experience. I saw an Aussie streamer who just happens to have an American accent, and he's playing Battlefield for the first time as like an ad stream or whatever, and he comes on in, goes like the chat said, "Oh, go to server browser, go join up on something." He was like, "Okay," advance, and it's like, "Oh, this one's open," and clicks it. Doesn't even look at ping, connection values, nothing. Just goes right into it. Ends up in a Japanese server, and starts playing, and like is wondering why can't I kill anything? Like everything seems really spongy, and this guy is doing weird things. I'm dying in one frame. And people, it's just that they don't know. New players just don't know. Like, oh, that's what those icons mean. Like,
I don't think it's related to the fact that it's just Battlefield alone. I do think it is a different generation of gamers who don't technically realize what ping is. They just see a server and they go, "Oh, this has this many people, I'm joining." They don't know the difference of low ping value to high ping value, and it's not just a straight up Battlefield only scenario. You encounter it anywhere you go. It's just one of those things that I don't think is very well described to a lot of younger generation PC gamers nowadays that never had to deal with the fact that you have to sometimes play in a European server when it's late at night and all your NA servers are dead because you're forced to, not because you want to.
Cyber Sage asks in the chat here, do you think they should completely get rid of lag compensation? Well,
if they
yeah, go ahead.
The weird thing with lag compensation in the game is it's currently running on a weird hybrid system, and this has been running since, I believe, Battlefield, is it 3? I want to say it's like Battlefield 3, probably since they went towards...
They did weird stuff in BF1.
The server browser.
They had the softening, I guess.
I can't remember if it was I just can't remember what Battlefield it was. All I know is it was one of them that basically took the weird hybrid system of dedicated servers and peer-to-peer. And somehow it's a weird kind of mishmash currently in between. And it's definitely weird because lag compensation plays into that in a very poor way and doesn't work or translate well across Frostbite. It goes back earlier to me saying that there's a weird sweet spot, right? Where a person is lagging, like you could see them lagging, but on his screen he fine, and he
feels
can
normal.
See,
yeah,
it feels normal.
I tried this with my friends. We went to a German server, 170 ping. They're like, dude, I'm running around and this is fine, normal to me. I even get away with stuff like spawning on a beacon, even though the beacon's been destroyed. And then I got all the time in the world because I'm in the future or something, or in the past.
Right. You're in the future or the past. That's what I'm talking about. You'll have these people who they'll like jiggle you in a corner and they'll get a quick shot off and he hits you, but you see him technically 10 frames later then peek the corner after the shot's already hit you. And it's frustrating. Like he's not, and that's the problem. And because there's the sweet spot that these Asian players that I'm assuming, or European players, they could be either or, that are all invading NA currently, it's really tough to play late at night or in the morning. So it's hard. You're training yourself for something to play in the future, which is probably beneficial for me, but it doesn't take away the frustration.
Yeah. But you guys like the beard? Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've been having the quarantine beard.
Oh, yeah, looks good on you, man.
Not till it's all over, man. You see me a baby face. When this is all over, you will see it once again. I'll probably have tan lines. God dang. Okay. All right, let's switch it up a little bit. Let's talk about your doggo, huh?
Oh, my doggo. I love him.
Well, not your... Okay, we'll get to your mice here in a second, but there's your little doggo, Spark, at your
that's
battle
my old
station.
Oh my God, that setup is so old now. I still have that poster in the same spot, but I mean, that setup it looks so different now. Still the same desk, different cases, different chair, different monitors, different TV, everything. But yeah, Doggo's still the same. He's still a good boy. He's now 5 years old, I believe. And that's him with his name is Spark, or Sparky, but I call him Spark. He was named by my father, who was a fireman in the 70s, and he grew up with other firemen around him having, the old stereotypical Dalmatian in the fire station named Sparky. And he said if he ever got one, he would name him Sparky. His original name, actually, when we got him, was Hogan. His name was Hogan, but he was only like maybe, oh gosh, he was only like 6 months old at the time when we got him. So we started calling him.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
very young in this one.
Yeah, he's probably about maybe a year or two in that one.
Oh
That
my
was what during
goodness.
Christmas Day when my
Ah.
mom got him a giant candy cane. Oh my gosh, he's such a cute dog. I love him to death. Love him.
You say your parents had the other one?
Yeah,
Maybe
my
this one?
parents have another dog. They also actually have a Dalmatian, and it's not that one, but
Oh, okay.
that was his litter mate growing up, and because we got him from California originally, so he was flown up to my state, and that's when we got him up here. But a couple years later, the parents ended up getting their own, and it's a her, and her name is Smokey, and she is much more crazier than my dog currently. My dog is very relaxed and calm, but she's just a off the wall. But man, I love him to death. He's such a good boy.
The other interesting thing that you may or may not know about music is a fascination with mice. And
I'm an enthusiast. I am.
I've heard you've had a massive collection of mice. Is that true?
I do. I have a very large collection of mice. That is very true. Very much stored on shelves and currently in ottomans as well.
Oh my god. Okay, so why keep them around? Are they like nice and cleaned afterwards, and then like almost like a trophy?
I'm not like super obsessive over them. The weird thing for me is I got into this years ago, mainly because it's kind of an interesting fascination which plays into just me playing the game, right? It goes to, okay, all of these mice feel very different and perform very different, but which one works and feels the best for my grip? Like what feels the best to aim? It's a fun hobby for me because you get all of these things that feel so different that can improve your aim or make it feel drastically different, that it's just fun for me to swap out every now and then. Fun fact, kids, don't look up mechanical keyboards. That's way more expensive. My hobby is very much benign compared to mechanical keyboards. Those people, if you want to see elitists and enthusiasts, do not go to our mechanical keyboards.
Oh baby, you post something in there and you don't know what you're doing, like look out, the claws come out. No, I've seen people. So that begs the question: what's your favorite so far in your over the years that really stands out? You know.
So it's very weird for me. When I first started competing, I was using an OG Death Adder, or rather, when I was, let's say, when I was playing Counter-Strike, I used an MX518. And up until then, when my MX518 original sensor failed, I swapped to the Death Adder. And this is right when the Death Adder had come out.
Oh, yeah.
And I used that for a while. Then the scroll wheel broke. And then I upgraded to the newer version, which was the Death Adder 3.5G. I had two of those. All died the same way. Scroll wheel caved in. And after the third one, I was like, okay, I need to do something different. And this was around the time of Battlefield 4, so that's when I got the original Zowie FK, which had just come out. And so I used that for a long time, and then my hobby kind of started, where it was like, oh, look, here's the G302 from Logitech. Okay. Oh, this one I can aim a little bit better with. What happens if I get this one? And then this, you see, kind of progressed where it was a hobby for me. And it's fun for me. It's just kind of like, it's a weird little thing for me to test. And I know it's weird to a lot of people, but it's fun for me. It really is kind of nice to see which one I can perform the best with. And it really is fun kind of looking back at older mice that I had. Specifically, like I've gone back to newer versions of Death Adders. I performed terribly with them. I don't know how I played well with them back then. Maybe it's my sensitivities changed over the years, which it definitely has. My grip has changed over the years. It's always interesting going back and revisiting older ones.
Yeah, I've recently changed my sensitivity for Battlefield 5. It's a whole new experience. It just takes a few weeks to get used to it, really. But I mean, one question I wanted to ask you about your mouse collection is, while playing with Battlefield or even Battlefield 5 right now, do you bind anything specific to your mice other than
prone?
Point and click?
Prone is on my back mouse button. It has been since BF3.
That's
Because
interesting.
my logic behind it is such: if your pinky finger is on shift and the rest of your fingers are on W, A, and D, and the swap
Yeah.
between S, of course, it doesn't leave much room because you have to take a finger off of A to Z or
Yeah,
shift
you
to Z,
can't.
which
Right.
is uncomfortable. And in the heat of combat, it's easier just to move your thumb up with a roll and go prone with your mouse. So I did that for years, and I'm still doing it because it's one less key for me to press in the heat of combat.
Oh yeah, all my defaults are the ones that I've learned, and all my rekey bindings are based on Battlefield 2. Everything that was the same in Battlefield 2, I still use to this day until they introduced sliding, which came in Battlefield 1. I was like,
I will still argue against sliding. I think sliding was one of the worst things they ever implemented into Battlefield.
Interesting. Okay. But I couldn't slide because I was, holding down shift. I can't just let go and then hold control. Like, I don't have an extra finger for that. So I have to bind it to my back button to slide.
I guess it's not a big deal for me because I can just slam my pinky down both on control and shift at the same time for sliding.
Ooh,
sliding,
that's hard.
Yeah, no, not really. Once you do it enough, it becomes very easy. But the big thing with sliding is not only does it kind of falls under the same area as vaulting does with the Frostbite engine. An animation plays, but the hitbox is not aligned. So if you're shooting sometimes at a guy who's vaulting, for instance, you're shooting him and you're not getting registers. You're seeing blood, but you're like, what's going on? Where's his hitbox? And as soon as the animation finishes, it can already like skip a couple frames if he's lagging and he's already shooting you. So it just goes from vault to instantly him shooting you. And you're like, what the fuck just happened? Or if he's not, sometimes you can get it. And it's the same with sliding. Depending on how it goes, their hitbox is either ahead or behind. And it's very frustrating to deal with, not to mention it led to a lot of very predictable players in Battlefield 1, which is the way I would describe it. Players who would play only Automatico, Hellregal, or the amazing God Post buff SMG08, and they would just slide around every corner they came around because you could spam that bad boy, and these dudes would slide around every corner, and you could tell every time you played him, you're like, oh, look at this dot running right to me. All right, I'm just going to aim my mouse low, right at headshot level, and sure enough, zip, here he comes, SMG08 hipfire, and you're like, okay, all right, I get it over with, and, that's the thing. I believe that certain mechanics are heavily abused to the point where a lot of people rely on them too heavily.
Oh, yeah.
And if ever comes a game where it's removed, they're not going to exceed or adapt to it. It's the same reason why there were people who played BF3 and never went to BF4, because there was a little known mechanic that was heavily abused in competition, by the way, called Euro Hipfire. Why did we call it Euro Hipfire? Because the Europeans learned of it first, and Europeans heavily abused it in competition.
Can you explain it a little bit for the audience? I'm not even sure what that means.
So what European Hipfire entails is people would change it so when they ADS, it would be not a toggle, but like a hold, right? Like what people are probably used to now, I toggle ADS. But what they would do is they would instantly tap their ADS, so it would play the slight animation of going into ADS and back out. But in that frame, if they hit fire and they held it, it would be ADS accuracy while hip firing with the hip fire movement speed. So you would have these people who were perfectly accurate with their M16s and AEKs hip firing you, moving very fast, but at ADS accuracy. And it was heavily abused. And it was something that wasn't fixed for a very long time. I don't even know if it actually was fixed or not. Didn't
they change it in BF1?
This was back in BF3, so this was something that definitely wasn't in BF4, and this was something that I'm pretty sure wasn't in BF1 at all.
Oh, I don't.
Either way, if it still exists in BF3, because it was bad to the point where you would see these people who are just perfect hip firing you, and you're like, oh, he's abusing that.
I see. I probably would have just called him a cheater.
And it goes back to the statement of these are the people who abused this mechanic and relied on it so heavily that when a new game came out, they couldn't switch because they abused it. They used it too much. They couldn't play the game without it. And it's the same thing with sliding, I feel like, because if there's ever a game where sliding is removed, you're gonna be very, very sore, I feel like.
What are people
if you
abusing
don't
now
adapt.
in BF5? What are they abusing now?
Sliding is still heavily abused, and sliding is still very much heavily abused. It's not as bad as it was in BF1 where you could spam it like every other frame, but it's still very, very bad.
So
because even
man,
like I'm guilty of abusing the mechanic, but it's one of those things that you kind of have to do to keep up. But needless to say, if it was removed, I can learn to live without it. Doesn't bother me.
That's gonna bother me. I have a feeling that they might get rid of slide, or it's gonna turn into the Modern Warfare slide, which is pretty abysmal.
I don't
I hate it,
I don't know. Tactical sprint is still something I have a hard time adapting to in that game because it's really janky.
The whole sprint, you can't reload while sprinting thing bothers the living shit out of me.
Yeah, I agree. It bothers me too.
Fido Slime here. Would have Battlefield been received differently if DICE gone all the way with unknown conflicts such as Korea or Falkland Islands instead of having a widely known World War II setting? Dude, a lot of people want that for the next game, the Korean War or something like that. I don't know.
It
would have been
the Korean War itself
different.
is one of those wars that again still has not been touched on by very many games. There are probably very few Korean War based games, but I think it's for
it wasn't the meta. People were wanting World War II game around that time, especially after BF1. They're like, it just makes sense. We need a World War II.
If they did attempt it, it would be interesting to see the spin on it, but I believe it's not widely used due to political implications. If I had to guess, but at the same time, it's also probably due to just not a whole lack of interest because most people are not very familiar with a lot of Korean War conflicts.
Yeah. I mean, again, General Patton, if like I was saying earlier, I don't think the franchise is gone. They can definitely make a comeback. Again, I never underestimate DICE in Sweden. They got some crazy tricks up their sleeve, and the technology they have is, well, I know saying that, the technology, right? They don't have it for like simple things like double XP events, but something terrible happened with BF5, okay? Let's just put it that way. But, you know, if they go off the rails and actually not release a typical Battlefield game, then we might see the decline of the franchise.
It goes back to what I said earlier. I think they have to go modern on this one, just because of the amount of people who have talked about how much they love modern games or they love the modern Battlefields. I don't see them going any other way. They can't take a risk again.
Some of the other risks I like Battlefield has been taking is the new game modes that they have come out with. Particularly Outpost and not Frontlines, Fortress mode. I would think maybe Outpost is one of the most unique modes that Battlefield has ever created. What do you think about Outpost, since that's this week's
so Rav and I actually played the other day for the Tides of War for Outpost, and this isn't the first time Outpost has been played, but it's different. It's not bad, but what I do notice a lot is that when you switch game modes compared to, like, I'm a Conquest man, there's no doubt about it, but
yeah, for sure,
if once you switch game modes, you start to realize the variety in players between them, and that's very interesting because you get people like what we played earlier with that guy who was sitting in BF4 in the main with that. You get that a lot in Outpost. You get people who play like that who will just prone somewhere or set up shop and they don't know any better. They don't want to play the mode. They're not interested in playing the mode. They're just like, I'm a sniper. And that's really what it comes down to. And it's not bad, the mode per se, but my big issue currently with the modes is I think that there's a lot of them I think that there's too many of them and not enough that are currently played. Because I know that a lot of people were obviously upset when something like Frontlines was removed, but I obviously am probably one of the few that didn't really care. I never played the mode. I will always
you never
believe.
tried it in BF1? Never tried it in BF1?
I tried it. I tried it in BF1. I tried it in BF5. I still wasn't a fan of it. Because I remember when I think it came out in BF1 and people were playing it. They're like, oh, yes, look at my 5-hour match of Frontlines. I'm like, good God, dude. Like, I barely have enough to play 3 hours. You want me to play 5? I'm not trying to do Alterac Valley and Vanilla WoW. I'm trying to play a shooter. Like, what do you want? But there are people who love that. And that's fine. But I think the people who love that are the very small minority of people. And when you have that small minority, sometimes you have to remove that stuff for the greater good of people to play more game modes. But, you know, it's one of those things that I think they should have really had a small set amount of game modes from the start.
It kind of seemed like BF5 was a testing ground for new ideas, almost like if the whole game was a CTE. Do you feel that as well?
Yes, especially with the removal of CTE, they're trying their best to just throw things out there and see what sticks.
Every once in a while,
if we had something like a CTE, even though I think the CTE never really worked intentionally the way it should have.
So many game modes just start coming out of nowhere every fucking month. Like, hey, we got a new game mode. It's grind. Whoa, this is crazy. Right? New game mode. It's Fortress. Whoa, this is different. New game mode, Outpost, and then all of a sudden, everything stopped. Like that. It just stopped everything. I was like, whoa, well, keep going. Hey, you got other ideas, right? Like, keep us interested. You guys still working on the game?
I think that we're trying to see what people did like. I agree with that. But I do also believe that they should probably go back to the older style of keeping your game mode simplistic. Because if you keep your game mode simplistic, you're not dividing all of these people into different modes that will only play this and will only play that. If you only have 4 modes, sure, you'll only have people who play this or that, but that's a lot more people that will be conduced into that game mode. Not to mention we will have, well, rather, I hope they go back to the older style of making individual maps designed around game modes, because that's why Russian BC2 worked. That's why it worked so well. They were like, okay, we're going to make a map from the ground up specifically designed for Rush. And that's why these maps worked out great. Harvest Day was wonderful because it was Rush. You had Oasis, which was Rush.
All Bad Company 1. Well. Bad Company 1 stuff.
Exactly. And then they took those and brought them into BC2, and then they did the same thing again, and it worked. And I really do believe that if you design a map based around a game mode, it's going to be more fun for the player overall, and people will enjoy your maps much more. I'm not saying don't try to add on different game modes to that map later, but don't go into the expectation of designing a map around 10 game modes, because
that's exactly what they did.
Because you're not going to nail it on either front. Your map's going to be bad,
it's going to be sloppy,
or your modes are going to be sloppy, right?
And I mean, the whole talk of the town right now, because of data mines always bring up the talk of the drama nowadays, even though most of the time it never comes to fruition. But people are talking about the Grand Ops being redesigned. I think that costs too much money, to be honest.
It's gonna be with the data mine of Grand Ops redesign, of course, as we talked about earlier, data mines don't really mean a whole lot nowadays. Especially because I don't know of any current data mines that we've seen in the past couple months even make it to the game.
Oh, no, I haven't seen anything yet.
There are some weapons when you go back and look at those data mine videos that Temporeal put out for some of the unreleased weapons. You're like, oh, yeah, this made it into the game. This did. But, you know, where's the Panzerschreck? Where the hell is that thing? Where's the Well Rod? Where's the other medic weapon that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head?
They're all for the 5v5 game mode music.
You're right. Yes, you are correct. And
that was tied to it for some reason. I don't know why that was the case, but
that's another thing I could go into. Good Lord.
Do you have a suspicion as to why they were tied to one specific game mode? Like, how weird is that?
It's not the fact that they were tied to the game mode. It's the fact that I don't think incursions was a good idea from the start. Because
Yes.
it falls under another Firestorm scenario, right? Wasted resources on something that's not guaranteed to pay off. If you design something from the start in your game, particularly, this is what I think made Battlefield even have a competitive place in the first kind of area here, is that we had people who played the game enough and loved the modes enough to see a competitive side within those modes and make a competitive side of those modes. And it worked. That's why people loved Squad Rush. And I still love Squad Rush because it's so fun to play. And if you're a viewer and you look at it from an outside point, you understand what's happening. It's not confusing. And then you get a scenario like what happened in BF4, where we had something called squad obliteration.
Oh my god! I totally forgot about that.
And obliteration was one of the biggest clusterfuck modes I've ever played and viewed. Like I watched people try to cast competitive, quote unquote, obliteration or squad obliteration, and I'm going, what's happening? Like there are people dropping from the sky. This guy has a thing. He's driving somewhere. Is that good? Like as a viewer, you're sitting there just scratching your head like, how is this fun? But that's the thing with incursions. It goes back to it, right? You're making a mode intentionally designed for a competitive play, and I don't think that's the smart way of going about things. Because if your mode is just integrated from the start without any intention for competitive play, players will decide. Players will gather and go, this works. We can do this. And that's why I think it was kind of a waste. A lot of even the people I talked to about it who were playing Battlefield 1 back then, who played competitively before, were like, well, yeah, why? Like, I get what you're trying to do, but don't force it on us. Like,
right. Let the community make it up for themselves. Just give us the tools and the basic game mode. There you go.
If you present something, people will decide. If you build it, they will come. That's what it is.
But now everything's a test bench. There were planned game modes in BF1. There's a couple goofy ones. The pigeon game mode that people are bringing up in chat was kind of goofy. It worked here and there. Well, I forget the name of the other one where there was some sort of like drop or something came from the sky and you had to protect it or something. Do you remember that one?
I kind of vaguely remember this. It kind of sounds like it was called
Supply Drop.
Oh, okay. I don't think I ever played it. It sounds very similar to what Headquarters is, kind of in Call of Duty.
Right, yeah. I guess so. I never thought of it that way. But yeah, it's a lot of goofy stuff was in the past Battlefields. But man, if you keep going back to like 21 and 42, man, Titan mode. You remember that?
Oh, well, of course. I mean, that was the staple. That's the thing. They made the game around that mode, and it worked. That's what we go back to, right?
Then you go to BF3, right? BF3 had the remake of it.
BF4 had the remake.
Yeah. Ugh. With the carriers, right?
And it didn't work in BF4 because it wasn't the same. I get what they tried to do in the sense of it was a kind of a nice tie-in in the later expansions of BF4 where they were like putting in, oh god, what was it called? Was it called Endgame? I think it was Endgame. Whatever it was that had the giant snow hill map that led up to the Titan being built within the hangar, and it had like the launch pods. That was kind of a nice homage. But in the sense of how Titan mode played in BF4, it wasn't the same at all. It just the big thing with Titan mode was you had the excitement of you had to get up to the ship, and by then you had players already guarding the ship, and then you had to go down 2 separate corridors, which were just massive meat grinders, and you had to clear them out, manually blow up a control panel, then get into the middle, and then you had to manually blow that up too, and then jump off the ship and escape while it was blowing up if you got it. And it was so much fun. It was hectic and crazy.
Yep.
And instead what we got was oh, the shield's down. Okay, time for rush. Just go plan an MCOM.
Yeah, there's no like story to it. Where 2142, I mean, it was a goofy game for sure, but it felt like a narrative of this is what you had to do, and once you got used to it, it was like your new favorite game mode at that point. Because sometimes you can play as Conquest. Just go get the missile silo sites.
That's how it worked. The missile silos, it was basically Conquest to that point, and then it added a more exciting manual element on top, which is why I think it was very widely accepted.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I hope they bring that back one day, but they gotta do it right. Basically, like you said, build it on there, build the map for the game mode for sure.
Yes.
Next thing I want to talk about was okay, we covered Outposts, Grand Ops. What's the worst Battlefield you've ever played?
Are we including free-to-play versions?
Yeah, sure.
Or AAA titles alone?
Worst Battlefield or EA? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, there was one free-to-play.
There was 2 free-to-plays.
2 to free-play, yeah, 2.
So there was Battlefield Heroes, which was something that people argue that would do well today, and I agree it'd be another Fortnite day. Or
I don't know.
Or it was, but the worst one I think I played was probably Battlefield free to play, is what it was called, because it was technically built off the backbone of the Frostbite engine, but baked into your browser. And it was really weird. It was like they tried to take BF2 and then add the Frostbite engine to it. Just didn't play good. It wasn't good. It was like this weird abomination that they just like took BF2 and Bad Company 2 and slammed them together in a web browser, and it just played awful. It wasn't fun.
Man, we have a lot of comment. That was my worst rated one. Was play for free. Do you remember when you would load into a map and it would load every single person's loadout and skin? Do you remember that?
Kind of. That sounds familiar.
It was
sounds like a bug that would make that game even more crazy. Yeah. It was probably not my favorite, at least when it comes to all of them. If we're talking about free to or just AAA games alone of Battlefield releases and not free to play, it's still probably Hardline for me just currently, because Hardline, while the beta was fun, I loved the first beta because it felt somewhat reminiscent of BC2 to me, which was fun. However, the game it worked, right? But somehow down the line, they did what they did currently with the time to kill changes, but they didn't make the weapons worse in the sense of it took longer to kill. No, it was too quick. Like it felt like you were playing hardcore. And after a while, it just wasn't fun because the metas for weapons were defined within a week. Like I can name all of the weapon meta right now for Hardline. M16, M416, SA58, 300 Blackout. Oh, and my favorite, K10. K10 defensive perk.
Love that gun.
Everybody and their mother was running, and we called this during the second beta too. We're like, this is bad. Everybody, because at this point, this wasn't like things are going to be changed. This was, oh, this is what we're getting. And what we got was the K10 being just an absolute equivalent to what the Type 2A was a couple months ago. However, the K10, I will argue, wasn't nearly as bad as the Type 2A, but it was up there, man. Like, it was bad. Everybody was running around with it. And then once the K10 was nerfed, it was just all of those weapons I mentioned.
They do this in every Battlefield game. There has to be the fast-firing pew-pew-pew gun that all the noobs are gonna love, you know what I'm saying?
My conspiracy theory is that there is some developer out there in the back end who's just like who's like showing up to the office really late at night when people go home, and he's just like, all right, time to code, and then he just tosses it in there and people somehow overlook it. It was like the same thing with the AA in Battlefield 4. It's like someone just threw that in there and gave it Zunies and called it good, flipped it in there, and someone just didn't realize it.
Oh yeah, and probably midway through Battlefield 1, it was like, oh yeah, I see your Automatico.
Yeah.
Guy goes in the back. He's like, okay, what's the shittiest gun out there? What about this SMG08 slow fire rate, big box mag? Everyone hates it. All right, I'll get my fingers in this thing.
Yeah, dipped his fingers in the pie, and there it is, over buffed and OP. It's a very, I will say they are consistent in one thing that I've noticed. Either a gun is heavily over-tuned or over-nerfed, and then nothing feels consistent. And that's my problem, is you can have like 3 guns that feel really solid in a class, and the rest feel bad.
Yeah.
So what they'll do is, instead of raising up those guns to those levels, they'll take those ones that are good and bring them down, which is just like, well, now you've taken the fun ones and we're back down to just not feeling fun at all.
Yeah.
Why can't we bring up the other ones that felt bad to the fun level? So that's the problem, is nothing feels consistent balance-wise with weapons, because there are heavy outliers in any game you play in the Battlefield franchise.
Yeah,
except for BC2, I will argue, where every gun felt fun to use.
Slightly off topic, I kind of missed the whole rocket launchers that were on a wire, the wire guided rocket launchers.
If you look at my battle log, I still believe the straw is my number 2 most used weapon.
You killed me so many times with that goddamn thing.
That's because it was the closest thing we ever got to the AT4 again. And the AT4 was so good in BC2. And then once we got our hands on what was basically the AT4 2.0, it was a lot of fun. Not to mention just the jankiness that you could use originally with it, which they changed later.
Yeah,
rightfully so. But then they did the thing that we just talked about and nerfed it into the ground.
I believe I have a clip of that. Let me see if I can find that. I did that one already. Man, it was okay. I don't know if I have it. Let's see.
I believe there's one on my YouTube that I think was called
oh yeah. Okay, well basically
enemy nuke amount or something like that. I can't remember. That was showing off the capabilities of how the straw, you could use it essentially as an infantry cruise missile at the time.
Yeah, it is on your channel. Hold on, let me bring it up real quick so people can see this. Let's see. It was on something attacking A, I think it was called, right? Attack on A.
No. That was something else entirely. Right? I don't think it was that one. I don't think I used well maybe. So that kind of actually from the start there shows off kind of how the straw was that you just skipped. But that was like the wire guided one. This one was just basically me solo attacking A. I think this was after like
something else, yeah.
I remember this highlight specifically.
Oh no, this is it right here. All right, watch. Here, listen.
To the north. Incoming straw cruise missile.
Yes. So what you could do right there is you could fire it,
nice.
Forget, retrain it for a second, and the missile will go, go there, boom. Yep, right there. I loved it. As much as it was broken, I loved it because it got rid of the sniper problem, man. You'd have these guys who go up on the roof, bail from choppers, and just set up shop, and then it was just like the get off of that, play the game. But it really is. I understand why they did it, but I miss it.
They gotta bring that
really
back.
Do.
If the next game is modern, they gotta bring back something like that, a tow missile, or I don't know. What do you think about lock-ons? Do you think they should ever bring those back?
Lock-ons, I don't agree with at all.
No.
I think lock-ons are very much something that shouldn't. Well, let's see here, because it's one of those things that I'm thinking about now from different perspectives. I get why lock-ons are in the game, because if your helicopters, for instance, are very, very fast and agile, you do need something that can catch up. But in the case of what BC2 had, was we didn't have lock-ons, we had the tracer dart. Now the tracer dart actually had an element of skill to it, which what I loved, because if you wanted to kill something, you had to hit that bad boy with a tracer, and then you could lock onto it from anywhere and get it. But if your other team was smart enough and say your helicopter was, traced, you could have people in your side gun pull out their smoke launcher as assault, boom, smoke that bad boy right off. Another counter skill. Or if they were running smoke already on the chopper, they could take it off. And so that's what I loved about it, was that there was a skill on both parts that had to be played for it to work effectively. But in the case of Battlefield 4 and lock-ons, yeah, that wasn't good. Because I
man.
will say that as somebody who flew the Little Bird a bit,
yes,
you have flashbacks and just in your sleep hearing the beep 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 beep, and then you go, okay, now I have to flare, and then they nerfed flare. Or as soon as you hear the first beep after it, you're like, oh, ECM run dip.
I think someone brought up a question here in the chat. Mr. Slime again. The skill gap ranking of all the Battlefield games. Well, how would you rank the skill gap for each Battlefield? Or which one, I guess, which one would have the most skill gap?
If we're going purely off of skill gap base, I would say BF2 is probably at the top, refractor engine based game. That game, just, I don't know if it was because it was so old at the time and how the mechanics played. I would say it was definitely BF2 for the highest skill gap, and then I would rank BC2 in the Frostbite engine era as the skill gap, simply because there were a lot of mechanics you had to learn in BC2 to effectively pull off good plays, and some people just couldn't do it. But once you understood, like, oh, any weapon can be actively tap fired, this changes the game a lot.
Yeah, I can see that. I was kind of thinking BF4 a little bit, but
BF4 is a game more of, it still falls under the area of metas, I would say. The game is very meta heavy. You will definitely, even today, I bet, hop into a locker server and all you'll probably see is people with Ace 23s, which I didn't really think was that bad, or the more prominent AEK, which is people running around AEK medics with their little tiny burrito pouches self-healing themselves. And that's your infantry meta heavily. But in the case of BC2, there never really was anything like that. You could play any class, any class, any gun, and do well with it. There were certain weapons, obviously, we chose just because of the general consistency of them, but you could do well relatively with any weapon if you had the skill. And that's what I would say is what makes the difference.
Well, there you go, Mr. Slime. Okay, so, I got some other clips I wanted to show you. Older ones from the closed alpha of Battlefield 5. I think you were messing around with the MP40. I'm not sure why it pauses here, but let me see what we were doing. I mean, Narvik was a totally different game there at that point.
Yeah, that was much darker.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot we had the MP40. That was another weapon that was actually really strong at the time, was the MP40.
Yeah.
Here, Erste Hilfe.
The UI changed crazy. It's just crazy how much it changed.
Yeah, if you notice, like when you get those kills, I think they took them out, but those crosses, I think the cross system, I think they took that out a long time ago. I actually didn't mind that, and they also took out the color-coded revive. It was very different.
Yeah. I remember you had the needle actually as a, you just take it out and then you use it, I guess.
This is, I think, when I discovered too that I was like, oh right, this is where we have
syringe,
well, not only syringes, but hip fires. Hip fire in general was strong again, because you're like, oh, this is like Battlefront 1. Hip fire is strong again. Like ADS doesn't really do much like it did in Battlefield 1. You hip.
Yeah.
Like out of habit, I still ADS, but yeah, this is like really when you realize that you can hip fire in this game.
That was interesting. Always interesting looking back at the closed alpha and the betas. And again, we touched upon this earlier about how much gameplay was a focus for Battlefield 5. Gun mechanics was a huge focus, and that's all they cared about at the time. And now, you know, customizations and tank customizations is now the focus now, and it's really sad to see.
Yeah.
Let's see here. This was another earlier one, I think. Oh no, 2019. You might have to explain this one to me a little bit. Here, check this out.
Okay. I win.
What?
Oh yes. I recall now. Yes. So
What?
obviously this was a good round.
Is this an
But
actual dice
Rav and
step?
I
Am
play a
being
little
trolled
game
here?
where we like to see who calls us out, and whoever calls us out first, which one of us cheats, we say, oh, I win, or someone wins. And in the case of this was a dice dev. This was a actual dice. You can see him at the top of the enemy scoreboard there. That was him. He called me out for cheating, and that was like, in my eyes, one of the most ultimate wins and compliments I can get is when a dice dev, a person who helped make this game, thinks you cheat at this game, even though you're streaming and you've been playing Battlefield games for years.
It
was like
trolling, right? I mean,
no, he was ultimately serious. He was. That was that was probably one of my favorite ones. But I think someone tried to make a Reddit clip of it once, and I think he replied in it. But all I know is I think that thread got shadow banned just because they didn't want to have a huge thing over it. So I don't know. It was weird, but it was like one of the nicest compliments you can unintentionally get. So I am sorry, Crom, if you are out there. My bad, bud. Just playing the game.
Okay. The next clip here was during the TTK debacle. Here, check this out. Oh man. And the FG42 was the best at that time. But then the patch came out and this happened to you here.
I was just trying to prove a point.
Second TTK.
And they have people. Oh my gosh. 96.
Double headshot twice
35?
in a row.
Yep.
Okay, sure. 7.62 Mauser, by the way. 7mm Mauser, by the way.
7 mil Mauser, by the way. 35 damage, double headshot. Dang. Was playing assault.
Yeah. That was crazy.
That just goes to show you, I don't know what they were thinking. I guess their logic was, oh, because of the fast fire rate, this instantly classifies it as a close range weapon, just like they tried to do with the 1907. But my goodness, like that was, what were they thinking? 20 bullets, and if you can control the recoil alone and you land the shots, it's doing 9 damage a hit with a multiplier that is so low that it evens out to 35 on a double headshot. It was insane.
Yeah.
That's really when I first experienced the FG42, is just being bad in that patch. And oh my goodness, the night and day from when they finally switched the time to kill back, it was just like going back to, I don't know how to describe it. All I know is that when they changed the time to kill, they took semi-autos and basically were like, all right, this entire class is just gone. Semi-autos, why are you using them? Just don't use them. This is the STG class now.
Yeah.
Oh, you want long-range engagements? You guess what? I got the gun for you. STG. You might not have heard of it, but it was really bad that the whole class divided into just use the STG for assault, and use one gun for support, and use one gun maybe for medic, which was ultimately the jungle carbine of all things, or the Type 2A when it was released.
That was actual pleasure to play with at that time, because we were hungry for something that can kill something at, a decent range or even close up. And when that gun came around, a TDM playlist was up, and I was everybody, dude. It was great.
It felt good for about a day.
And then
yeah. Once you realized the day felt, you're like, oh, this feels good. And then you're like, oh, wait, everyone's getting this.
Everyone's
Oh
good.
no.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Let's see. Do I have any other clips here I wanted to show you? Oh, this is poor Fedge in a tank. You discovered him in a unique little situation he's trying to get out of. Let's see. Tank gameplay.
Oh, Fedge!
Help, I can't get up. Oh, so nice.
Oh. Yep. I forgot about the plane crash and it tips him right back.
Help!
Oh no, it's over. Oh, just the comedic timing. You couldn't get that any better. Just you fix him and then right back on his side. Oh my gosh. There are some things in this game that you can't make up, but that's one of the things that I will argue that's really kind of frustrating about this game, where you take the whole slogan of only in Battlefield, right? That hasn't meant a thing in years. I would argue it hasn't meant a thing since BF4, but they basically have tried to take out any sort of randomness that can make the game, I wouldn't say broken, but just kind of fun. Like, you don't have to actively play the game, but you can like launch things and run up on tanks in a car and put C4 on the back and shoot it with a sniper rifle, and then it shows up as the sniper rifle killing the tank. Like, those things are fun. That's only in Battlefield to me. And
that's why I had the Team Mountain Goat guys. I had them on last time. The last show, previous episode. And that's all they do, man, is C4 stuff, jump over things, climb things. And they were the epitome of, only in Battlefield.
Kudos to them, but I can only imagine that a lot of their stuff that they pull off, is it something that they can actively go out of their way to do in a live game?
Yeah,
because it probably takes much more setup nowadays to do specific things.
Yeah, earlier on
that's one of the things that I will always define as always in Battlefield, is like, it's the stuff that just happens in normal games that really define what the game is. Like, it's neat that they set that stuff up, and I'm glad it's still there, but I wish that certain things like that could be pulled off in live games.
Yeah, they started using the sniper decoys to climb on literally anything, go up to the top of the skybox, or climb up to the top of Rotterdam White House.
Yeah.
But then DICE was like, we can't have that, so they got rid of it, and they were all sad. But
it was the same thing when they took out Mav riding way back in the day in the previous game.
Yeah, Mav riding. Yep. I got an older clip here of you destroying the entire British army here in Battlefield 1.
Yes.
Playing with Edgar Radvik Upper D1 here. You didn't need them at all. Oh, the pistols, man. Don't you miss the pistols or what?
I miss the sniper rifles and the pistol.
Oh, snipers are so strong. Hey, if you got that clip, Get Shrek, just post it in the chat here.
Jesus Christ. Man, like, the pistol, the 1911 was so good in this game. It wasn't on the level of BC2 1911, but once you got the hang of it, the Colt was probably the best sidearm for sure in this game.
And here's the current player base of Battlefield 5. This is a good clip here.
Oh my goodness! Look at this
prone shotgun man, right?
Right here, this guy. What? They're touching tips. Oh my god! Hello.
And the blueberry comes around, like prone's right next to him.
You gotta be kidding me!
Oh my goodness! And I was losing my mind. I just couldn't believe it. Like, It is really impressive sometimes, the people you see in this game and the self-awareness that they have, because he's actually standing on top of him and sees me die, but his first instinct is to go prone right next to him and not actually like see him. It's mind-boggling, this game sometimes. The frustration you have is I have to hold my tongue sometimes, because I'm like, all right, maybe he's new to FPS games, but whoo.
Yeah, then they come around one patch, so they change up the spotting mechanics. Remember that, where you can basically just look at a person, he's spotted for you personally. Maybe they made it for like that person there. I don't know. But a bunch of weird mechanics started dropping in. What? Like, we can't have this. This is broken Battlefield 1, remember? I know you and Ravik were like testing it in, I think, the CTE or whatever for BF1 for the personal spotting, or what do they call it?
We call it safe space. Us personally, we call it safe space, because what it was, the giant proximity circle essentially that they put around the player, and whoever happened to touch that circle, personal spotted. And then they brought it back again, and that drove me insane. I saw them bringing it back in the patch notes for 5.2, and I was just going, what? Why? We talked about this in BF1 during the alpha. Why is this back again in Battlefield 5? Like, I get that they want to fix spotting, but this is not the way to do it. And it's still not the way to do it. I'm glad that they've reduced it. It still technically exists.
Yeah.
But man, it's one of these things that it's trying to fix a problem by overdoing it the wrong way.
Yeah. That's usually what happens for an unfinished product, or they have to be, coming up from behind and trying to fix all the issues that were started in the first place. It's just
right.
That's what happens when you got to play catch up all the time. And it's like,
speaking of catch up, how do you? I'm just curious now. I'm asking you this. How do you feel about the catch up mechanic in this game?
Oh my god! Every stream I mention that when we're obliterating a team, like, oh hey, look, we lost everything, guys. Catch up mechanic, like, it's still in there, but it has to be like, what, 400 to 100 or something?
It's even very inconsistent. I've noticed that it can trigger is what weird. It feels like anytime is what it feels like anytime it can trigger.
Bad. It was so bad in the beginning. I was like,
it's still bad. There are times where you could be obliterating a team and you'll just see you'll look across the map that some dude just one person who happened to slip by, and he'll go to your gimme, and he steps on the flag, and it's one person, and he caps it like that, instantly flipped. And you're like, what? That's one person, and I'm here with my whole team trying to cap one flag that's taking 5 hours. It's I as someone, I understand why it's there. I should back this up. I got to look at it from both perspectives, and I really do. For the casual player's perspective, I understand why it's in the game as a hand-holding based mechanic. It instills the false sense of you're not really losing the game. The game is close. Look, you're coming back. But for the person who has played Battlefield enough, you're going, why is this here? If my team is doing well, I don't think little Timmy should be rewarded for just stepping on a flag by himself. How do you learn from your mistakes? You get put through the fire and the flames and you learn. But they don't want that, which is very confusing to me.
It's dumb, because the developers, I see them in interviews like, oh, if you want to win, got to win as a team. That was like one of their big things. You got to play the objective and you got to win as a team. All right, can't do it by yourself. And that was like one of the big things for BF5, especially at the beginning. And shit, you even heard this stuff in BF4, BF1, all those games. So you have all these random assignments. Assignment thing is a whole different discussion, but you have things in there that are anti-PTFOing, and there's a lot of mechanics in the game like bipoding or standing still or be in an objective and kill someone outside of it,
right,
or inside of it. It doesn't want you to move. Like, those need to be, get rid of those.
I will still argue that the PTFO, and to me, and I've always said this too, is such a weird term to me, because it started, I believe, around the time of BF3 is when it became very popular. The term of PTFO, along with another one of my favorite terms, aggressive recon. We can talk about that one later. PTFO to me is such, and you see it tossed around willy-nilly within the Battlefield community, and it's like, well, that's just called playing the game in my eyes. You guys, are you guys not playing the game? Like, are you guys not doing the thing, the game mode, the thing where you go to the thing?
No,
like
never.
But it seems to be tossed around so much that I don't know. Whenever I see it, I just go, yes, they play the game. Yes.
This is why we can't have nice things, man. I feel like maybe Battlefield Conquest was so complicated back in the day that it's like, we gotta simplify it somehow. I don't know, like, change the ticket system, make it, go the other way now. And BF1, like, why? I don't understand why they got to cater to the new player. Why can't there be a bigger skill gap like there was in Bad Company 2?
It's a different generational
different
thing.
Generation, yes.
That's I've said this many times on my stream before too, which is, we live in a day and age now where we're appealing to the gamer who is now, I guess if you want to use the term, Zoomer.
Yes.
Yeah, Zoomers who want instant gratification now. It's not about taking the time and practicing the skill to become better at something. It's to get that 5-minute instant endorphin brain appealing thing. Like, you need it. You need that quick hit to the brain to feel good. And that's the thing that bothers me today more than anything else, is there are so many inherent mechanics baked in to modern games to feel good to the casual player, but nobody wants to take the time to become better at the game.
Right. DICE needs to really focus on their Battlefield veterans, man. Like,
I mean, I've understand that I'm not the
treat
focus.
Us better.
We're not the target demographic anymore. We're being shipped out the door, unfortunately, and that's just how it is.
We get dog tags now, and told to bugger
thank
off.
you for my consolation prize.
Like, oh, you played all of our games for the past decade. Here's a little, dog tag for you. Is that cool? Okay, let's check out these clips submitted by the community here. Some of your friends. I think this one's yours, from Hurricane Bomber. Let's see what's this all about.
Use AR-160, please. I do like the AR-160, and I have not used them in a while. I'll consider it.
Oh, ready.
Shout out to the nail gun that actually got better in BF4 later. Oh my god.
Oh man, Bomber.
I would like to back things up a minute there. Not only just from that, but
Wait, go back to like the bomb?
No, go back to the staircase if you
the
did
guy,
not
like,
see this.
The sliding back guy?
Yes, yeah. I like to call him Frictionless Man. Another wonderful bug that has been in DICE games for many, many years that was not fixed. I love my reaction of just crossing him and not really questioning it, because at this point, it's common.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh, see, that's why I was dealing with tanks in BF4 not as bad as it is with BF5.
Up until they nerfed the SRA. Yeah, it was nice because it was, the AT4. You could deal with tanks from a distance and control where you had to go, which had a skill element to it, which I love.
Yes, they need that back, man. I can't stand the combat right now with infantry versus vehicle is just abysmal. People just like stare at vehicles now. They don't know what the hell is going on. And they're like shooting at it with their bullets. I see that a lot. Noobs like just look at a vehicle, it's like highlighted, spotted, and they start shooting at it with their gun. I'm like, that's not gonna do anything.
Those are still one of my favorite people, but you know, sometimes if you're in the tank, you gotta teach them the lesson. It doesn't work like that.
Even professional gamers that never played Battlefield before, like maybe Fortnite streamers, they do that too. They look at it, it's like, I'm gonna shoot it. No.
Yeah, you have to try, right? Like everything, I guess if it's the first time, you're not sure what works. It's like some people who always play like single player games, they're like, is there fall damage? And then they die. And they're like, yes, there is. So I don't blame them for trying. But again, you teach them the lesson that does not work.
Oh God, do you want behemoths back?
No.
Someone asked that. Oh my God.
I will always tell people this, that behemoths were kind of a joke, in my opinion, in Battlefield 1. Behemoths did nothing to your team other than they were meant to give the intention of, oh yes, you could come back with this, when in reality it was, no, if you're in the giant blimp, I'm probably going to snipe you out. All your gunners are just going to get sniped out. You're not going to do anything. You're not bringing your team back. It was literally a consolation prize is what it was. Oh, you're losing? You've won this brand new tank. That's what it was.
All right, let's check this other one. Cruise missile on flood zone. Oh boy. I think these are all ripped from your stream. Let's see.
Of course, you can tell it's definitely my old one. Logo at the top left.
Oh, these are good.
That boat gets cruise missile.
Oh, that fucking boat.
I think he's a little upset at me. Vehicles, they're really strong. He got cruised.
What a shot. That's amazing.
Good shot, Hurricane.
Yeah, I saw the clip there, Mr. Slime. Play that next.
It just goes to show, like, if you timed it right, and if you had people who sat in weird places, right, as a commander, especially if you were able to keep the attention of certain things, you could definitely send a cruise missile and help out. But there were some weird elements to it for sure.
Oh, I forgot those little drops you can have too.
Oh, the supply kits, yeah.
Yeah.
Not a bad choice, actually. I thought that was pretty clever to have in the game, personally. But I think they also had that in BF1, right? If I remember.
I think so.
By the boys.
What did Fido do here? Yeah, you can kind of see it.
Goes prone. Doesn't
I think this is when Fido, I think he hit me with the Panzer Wreck or whatever the the boys. I thought it was
Boys
the Panzer
18.
Bush. No, yeah, the hip fire.
Why would you do that, Fido?
Oh, was this spectator? Oh, this was spectator. Oh, I didn't see that at the bottom. This is my bad.
Yeah.
This is when we were. Oh, I remember now. Yes. So there's a backstory behind this guy, right? This guy, if you ever find him in your game, his name is Holy War. This man plays in the most interesting way I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, this is during the times where I will spectate noobs every now and then. But this man is probably taken the cake of, he doesn't sprint. He moves very slowly. And he only uses his pistol, but he doesn't ADS and he can't aim. And it was the most amazing thing to see, because your brain is going, what is happening right now? Like, how is he alive? Is this a real person? Is this a bot? Like, you're questioning everything that is presented to you with this man, and it was truly wonderful. That entire VOD on its own, like, if people want to find that, it was wonderful. So much fun just spectating noobs sometimes, because it really does.
It is.
It opens up an insight, and I always tell people this too when I do it, because some people get really upset. They're like, well, why are you spectating new players? Like, there's new to the game. Why are you getting upset at him? It's like, my intention is not to really make fun of him, but it helps you understand, if you're a new player, not to get mad and do these things. And we always cheer for them. We do. We cheer for them. We want these people to excel. We're so stoked when these people get kills. We're like, yes, absolutely. But we always want these people to exceed, but it's so fun watching just the cogs turn in the brain, because most of the games that you play in first person shooters are just gut reactionary. But there are some times where you can literally see the hamster wheel turning, and you're going, okay, he's thinking of the next step. But it's so fascinating. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love it.
Yeah, for sure. I watch Enders, or I mod for Enders, and he's been doing that lately. And there's some legendary players out there, man. Like sometimes, again, yeah, we root for them, and sometimes they just walk off a cliff voluntarily. And it is the most hilarious thing you've ever seen. But yeah, if you guys want to submit any other questions or clips that you want us to see, we're coming up on we're at the 3-hour mark. Can you believe that? 3 hours.
Like a normal stream time for me.
I know, pretty much. Yeah, me too. So if you guys have any last minute questions, submit them here. Use the channel points. Whatever you need to do, we'll try to answer them as quickly as we can. But yeah. Last thing here, you said you were gonna play some Valorant soon. What'd you hear from Valorant?
I'm really torn on Valorant. So I did the whole thing currently where I still argue that this is one of the dumbest systems ever to release a beta, where not only does it encourage people to technically create bot accounts to sit in streams just to get the chance, I believe they said it was like a 2% chance of getting a key. But most of the time, the people who are sitting in there, 2%. Yep. 2% out of, no, that's 1 million plus people, and 2% are getting into that beta. All right.
Wow.
But I somehow managed, luckily enough, just by idling in a stream, by these are people I'd probably watch anyway. Yeah. But the whole frustrating part is to just leave something open with a chance of getting into a beta for a game, because most of the time people don't care about the streamer. They don't care. They're not there to watch you. They're sitting there like they're idling for TF2 hats back in the day. That's really what it is. But for Valorant, I did happen to get a key. I did manage to get in. I've only played the test range for it, and the test range itself is interesting. You can see where the Counter-Strike mechanics come in with the gunplay, but from just going between the characters, I can tell there's going to be a problem for me, in the sense of it still falls back to the area of hero shooters. Hero shooters are never particularly done right. And I still believe that's the case with Valorant, because even though they're trying to mix essentially Counter-Strike like gun mechanics with the intent of abilities being like smokes or flashes or Molotovs, it doesn't equate to a good Counter-Strike-esque experience, because it will always be about the abilities of the character more than the gunplay. So I have not fully tried a match yet, but just from watching various streams of people playing it, that's really what it looks like.
It looks like a tough time. That's what it looks like. It looks like, damn, I gotta get good.
They're taking elements a lot from CS 1.6, and apparently even the animations and art style. The animations, I will say, do not look great, because there are people who are just flying all over the place like it is Counter-Strike 1.6. So, I mean, I'll have to give it a shot at some point here and play a legit match, but I will try to be as non-biased as I can, hopefully. But I'm going into it with not the greatest of intentions, but we'll see if it'll change my mind. My friends haven't been particularly adamant about it, so.
Gotcha. Okay, well, we got some last-minute questions here, and then we'll end the stream for the night. Okay, so let's start with, who asked the first question? Tombstone? Wish list for Battlefield 6?
A good game.
A good finished product.
But in all honesty, for Battlefield 6, the big thing is it's got to be just give me something that isn't a live service, because I think we've shown that a live service, it's not working. Whatever this is, it's not good. I would be even adamant to say bring premium back, just because at that point we have promised content in the pipeline. My big dream, of course, is a different engine entirely, but that's something that I think is more far away than close.
Yeah.
But I do believe that Battlefield 6 or whatever is next really has to knock something out of the park for people, or there is going to be severe consequences for the franchise.
Yeah, the one wish is a completed game and with no TTK changes, every Christmas.
That's agree. Less flip floppy. Be consistent with your choices. If
Please.
you're gonna make a choice, stick to it.
Yeah. From Kim here, how many mice do you have now?
Oh dear God. Probably somewhere in the realm of I'm probably at like 40, maybe 40 something, I would say.
Oh my God, I expected hundreds. Oh my goodness.
Oh no. I'm definitely like not trying to grab. I'm very particular. I will look at something for a while in reviews and compare it to what I already have. Is it worth the investment? Can I really do this level? It's a hobby, but it's definitely in the 40 something range right now.
When are you gonna use the Liberator?
Whenever they pay me money. I'm kidding, but like the Liberator, it's a meme. It's the Calibri, right? It's the Calibri all over again. I know they want me to put channel points in for specifically the Calibri, or not the Calibri, the Liberator.
Yeah.
But I have to make it a really high count. Otherwise, I'm gonna have people. And I know people who probably watch my stream probably have high counts anyway. So as soon as I update that, it's going to be like get 5 kills with the Liberator.
Oh God.
So, but I do need to put it in for channel points. It will be in there for get a kill with the Liberator, which, oh man, I'm not looking forward to, but I'll do it for you guys. Bite the bullet, or the lack thereof.
Zafara asks, what type of game mode would you personally put into the game that would be fun, competitive, but make it so that the roles are not as common?
Hold on, I need to actually read that question one more time. Can you say that one more time for me, actually?
What kind of game mode would what kind of game mode would you put into the game that would be fun, competitive, but make it so that the roles, I think you spelled roles wrong, but are not as common?
Oh, so like just not commonly used infantry roles within like a game mode?
Those.
That's hard to say, in all honesty, because most of the game modes, again, from what we've got, are very self-reliant on their own for different aspects.
I like large game modes. I'm fan of smaller ones.
I'm definitely in the large game mode sort of area too. I've never been keen for TDM or DOM or anything like that.
Make it more balanced. He meant more balanced.
More balanced. Okay.
So teams aren't getting destroyed at first,
Oh, okay. That's something else entirely. My bad. I thought it was like the combat roles. Excuse me.
That's what I'm thinking.
The big problem with Battlefield itself is this is nothing new. I hate to break it to you. The whole base camping issue has been a problem since 1942, where if a team is doing well enough, someone will get to your main and hold you there. But the closest I'd say we've had to not really being fully base camped actually is Battlefield 5. Battlefield 5 has actually done a pretty okay job of not getting people fully camped in their mains, but it's something that's not really possible to fix. Their attempt as well, of course, with comeback mechanic or catch-up mechanic, was that they wanted to make it feel like it was a close game and you're not getting completely rolled, but there has to be some greater system put in place to prevent it. But I don't know what you could put in that wouldn't piss off a lot of people or piss off a particular set of crowds like myself with catch-up mechanic, right? Because it's one of those things that's no winning in the sense of one person will be happy, but another will be upset. So it's one of those things that I don't know what the answer is, but they definitely have to keep trying.
Yeah, it would take a lot of time and a lot of testing to make sure those game modes that you want to implement are done correctly. Yeah. So it just takes time and money, and I don't know. You got to be creative, right? Where's the creativity, Dice? I like the Outpost game mode. I think it has a lot of cool things in it, man.
I do believe that they made some good modes, but you need to keep them small and simple. Can't overdo too many. Otherwise,
keep them simple.
It's gotta keep them simple. Less is more.
Yep. Okay. Let's see. Any other questions here? Where's Ravik?
Yeah. Thank you, Lord. Know where that one is.
Let's see. Yeah, we got that one already. Are you a dog in real life?
Well, nobody knows you're a dog on the internet, so.
Are you an Earplugs 5 user yet?
No, I prefer Earplugs 4. Sorry.
Are these on a podcast? I mean, they're here on Twitch VODs and on my YouTube channel. You'll find it there right after this. I'll probably do one of those supercuts again for the podcast. This one's a long one. This is like 3.5 hour talk here. I'm probably condensing it down to like, 30 to 45 minutes or something like that for you guys. But yeah, it'll be on YouTube. No specific like other weird websites or anything. But yeah. Do you want more class customization, or do you want a classy or class fantasy style of setup?
I always believe that class customization is good. I think it's not a bad thing. It's hard to say though. In the sense of Battlefield 4, for example, is you gave everybody the option to put on different customizations on your weapons, and that's fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, metas were still found. Like, why would you use something like a vert grip on an AEK when Stubby was the best option? Or why would you put on a flash hider when a compensator is better, right? Yes, it does allow people to create their own things that makes them feel good, or it feels like it appeals to their play style. But in the end, metas are always going to be found, and that's my problem. It'd
probably be more like a gimmick if it would be like, oh, make your own class. Like
I'm all for the one thing I will say that this is interesting, and I have actually talked to Rav about this, and I agree heavily. Battlefront 1 did something very smart, where it was a classless game in Battlefront 1, but what they gave you were 3 individual items you could equip on your character. So you could technically have something that played totally different with a different ability. And I liked it. It played very, very well in that game. Now, how it would have applied to Battlefield is something entirely different on its own. But Battlefront 1 did a pretty interesting thing where it was about creating your own class. So if they could experiment with that in a newer Battlefield game, I would not mind it at all, because you could probably create a classless system that has interchangeable aspects that plays very well.
Okay, that's a good enough. Let's just leave it at that. Let's keep going through these. Do you watch anime?
No, I'm not a weeb like you. Whoever said
that. Fido.
Love you, Fido.
Kappa. A Spark.
Happy birthday, by the way, Fido.
Spark cam win.
I always tell people this. 1, as we stated at the beginning, sorry, no webcam. And 2, that'd be a hell of a run to get a webcam all the way out just from where my current desk is all the way out to where he is. So
on the same room.
I'm gonna keep appealing to everybody else. I keep taking pictures of him and I keep putting them on the Discord and Twitter. So it's all there. I posted a Spark pic not too long ago for you guys for in my Discord. He's there. So I'll keep posting pictures when I can, fellas.
For Spark. There you go. Good one.
Yeah, there you
go. Okay, next one here. Yeah. These are so crazy. Tell them why you love the SR338.
I'm guessing that one's faint.
Yeah,
just for that comment alone. Well, you know why I love it, Faint, and why you love it. I actually didn't use the SR338 enough. I know, Faint, you love that weapon in Battlefield 4. I didn't use it enough, though. Not one of my favorites. I was more of a bolt action kind of guy.
Okay. All right. All right.
CS5.
What do you think about the Battlefield 5 weapon skill tree? The specialization tree.
Interesting prospect enough. It's kind of like their way of trying to bring back customization, but the big problem with it is that you're still heavily locked behind, like, this can only lead to this tree, which leads to this tree. You can't be like, I want to do one left, one right, one left, one right. You have to go one left, two right, one left, or the vice versa, right?
Yeah,
so
it could be more complicated. I think if they're gonna stick to that, just have it do different roles and have like one of them is like having a bayonet or something like that. Like you could play it different ways. I kind of like that. Just be a little more creative with it and not have all the vanilla guns have the almost the same exact skill tree. It gets kind of boring and the meta will be found almost immediately. So, I mean, they're on the right track where some guns have certain specializations that are unique to that gun. I kind of like that, actually.
Yeah. Whatever you could do, if they could mix it up and make it original feeling, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything that can, if you could take that original feeling and then expand upon it even further, that's good. And any amount of customization we can get is good, but only within certain realms of keeping it somewhat balanced and not broken.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why they did it this way instead of having each attachment have its own trait, you know? This way they can balance the guns easier either by changing the numbers or by changing up the skill trees. And that's what they ended up doing a lot of times for some of the weapons in the earlier patches. Right now with the new guns, right now we're seeing more unique stuff. It's not a lot of it.
Unique, kind of, yes. I think that that's the one thing that DICE has been doing that's interesting that I do like, is that they're taking the lesser known, like, forgotten style weapons and putting them in the game, and that's good because it adds to variety of, you know, how these weapons perform that is not commonly seen in real life or in games. So that is the uniqueness there. But if there's not enough weapons being added in the first place, like right now, it's getting kind of stale.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how they work with Battlefield 6. I think they're going to keep it somewhat similar to the skill tree we have right now, just because it's easy to balance, but who knows what do you think? Do you think they're going to try something different, or?
I wouldn't be surprised if they went back to a BF4 style of weapon customization.
Okay.
Because even then, that's still not technically hard to balance. It's just tweaking specific numbers of the attachments, but it definitely allows for more freedom in that style of how you want your weapon to perform.
What's your opinions on Rush? Should they kept it permanently or no?
Yeah, if I had to choose, I would say yes, it should have been permanent. But like before, I feel like Rush hasn't been good since BF3. I would argue is probably the last time it felt somewhat decent, because it goes back to the earlier conversation of maps being designed for the mode.
Yeah.
And when they first shut off Damavan Peak, for example, it was all built around Rush. You would get the first stage, go down the hill, get the second stage, and then you jump off the dam. And that was what was cool, and everybody loved that. So if they can bring back Rush in the next game and potentially build on the Rush mode itself for maps, I think it would be a big hit once again, and I hope they do that.
Yeah, I think they should get rid of Squad Conquest and put Rush in there, since they don't have the tech to add anymore. Might as well like delete Grand Operations and put in, I don't know, whatever's popular at the time.
Grand Operations was a big hit in Battlefield 1. Everybody loved it.
No.
Personally,
Breakthrough was not Grand Operations.
In Battlefield 1?
Yeah, that was Breakthrough. We didn't have like Airborne in BF1.
Oh, well, I guess so, yes. I'm more referring to just, it was called Grand Operations.
Oh, like the title? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, they bastardized it here in freaking Battlefield 5. It's like a mix of modes with days that don't matter, whether you win or not, and then a very rare last game mode, Last Stand, I think it's called.
I've only seen it in the whole time I've played this game. I've only experienced it twice. That Last Stand twice.
Yeah, there you go. But okay, that's what I would do for those game modes. Again, technology's slim nowadays, guys. Okay, relax. All right. Yep. Please comment on vehicle balance or lack of. Oh yeah.
Well,
have you ever hopped into certain vehicles or more on the ground?
Yeah, I try to hop into vehicles every now and then. I mean, vehicles are, as much as people like to say, "Oh, my tank feels weak," I have to argue, no, tanks are actually really, really strong in this game once again.
Really?
They're definitely not as bad as they were in something like Battlefield 4, but tanks, I would say, are pretty much a step below that, above BF1s. They're very strong. It's no longer just about having to. I get why people were probably saying it's punishing because they're probably just running in with no infantry support.
Right.
But tanks work when they have infantry support, but even without them, they're still crazy strong. You just have to have someone who has at least a decent knowledge of when to back out of a fight and when to take a fight. Tanks aren't nearly as bad as what we have now in terms of planes, especially when it comes to the Pacific. Pacific planes are on a whole nother level of unbalanced compared to what we have in base game planes.
I just want to get. I want them to get rid of the playlist. Like I'm just sick of those maps now at this point.
I still like the Pacific map. I just hate the planes, man. I hate having to look up every 5 seconds and see someone has flown to the top of the skybox and popped 2 flares, which covers about 1/2 of the map, and you can't see the flares for about another 5 minutes until it enters your bubble. And then he can hit you with, fire bombs that one-shot you or rockets that one-shot tanks. Yeah. I swear, I've seen players that have only play Pacific maps as planes and nothing else. Like I recognize names instantly when I go into certain Pacific servers. I'm like, oh yeah, there he is. Yes, I can point out a person and be like, yeah, there he is. Now let me guess, he's in a plane, and there he is. So that's I hope they take care of flares though. Specifically,
yeah, that should be fixed. I think it's on there.
Just remove them. Leave it to the infantry. We don't need plane flares.
Yeah, they got that from BF1, right?
Kind of, yeah. And BF1 planes had that, but even then, flares had the benefit of falling to the ground. So if you saw you were spotted, you could at least look for the flare and shoot the flare on the ground.
All right, next question here. Rip Peep asks, Battlefield 5 gunplay rating amongst the predecessors. Oof.
I would say it's a step above Battlefield 1's.
Oh yeah.
But I would also rank that relatively still on the low spectrum. Because for me, Battlefield 1, the gunplay was very stale except sniping. Sniping, that's why I sniped in that game a lot, was because it was the only thing that felt super responsive and snappy was sniping. All of the other gunplay within it just felt kind of clunky and not very cohesive. But Battlefield 5's is definitely better in terms of weapon use, but not by much. It's definitely a step above Battlefield 1's, and I would say below that of BF3's.
That was highly rated, BF3, yeah.
BF4 is kind of somewhere in the middle there too. Like BC2 will still always be my top, but BF3 and BF4 still had a lot of problems too with their gunplay.
I would mostly agree with pretty much everything you said there. All right, let's keep moving on here. Where can I ban Fido? I'll make you a mod right now.
I'm guessing that's Chuck, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what the answer is, Chuck. Eventually. Just kidding, Fido, please. It's okay.
I think we already, we already answered this question, Lord of the Sky. How much do you love planes? I think,
yeah, that pretty much sums that up. The answer is no.
Are lobster mermaids to scorpions? Are lobsters mermaids to scorpions? I think that's how you say it.
Yes, because if you think about it, they do have the tail and they are very pinchy.
There you go. All right. Best map? Wait, that's not a question, is it? Oh yeah, what's your favorite map in Battlefield 5?
Still Eris. I've said before, definitely Eris is probably my favorite, just because it's the closest we've had to a map that feels somewhat similar to any other Battlefield map. It feels and plays what I would quantify as a Battlefield map. And I feel like that's probably the one that's very most well done. You have your open areas, you have your close quarters areas, there's good rotations, there's timings you can get right. It plays very well.
You like Solomon Islands?
Solomon? Nah, no. Solomon's, I think, okay for probably for Conquest. Breakthrough is a huge problem, I would still say.
Yeah,
but
it's crazy.
It's definitely not my favorite. It's okay though.
I love when they balanced it. They like deleted some of the tanks for the first section of attacking, and then by that time the weekly playlist was expired, so they moved on to something else, so we couldn't play it. That was really fun. I remember that. Is music still a turbo nerd?
I mean, always. Of course I am, Uffer.
When are you streaming next?
Probably tomorrow. I should be streaming tomorrow. I'm hoping to stream in the morning. Should be doing some Battlefield in the morning, because I have been kind of skipping out on. But didn't get a chance to stream this morning because I had this today, so I'm doing this.
There you go. Will you show us your Sweetwater body pillow?
Sorry, I'm only a fan of Sarge. I have a Sarge body pillow.
Oh man.
Oh no, sorry. It's Truckosaurus Rex.
Truckosaurus. Okay. Do you even lift, Arthur? Do you even lift? Good question.
I mean, I left beers. Does that count?
I guess so. There you go.
There you go.
Question answered. All right. I think, oh wait. FF7? Is that Forza 7 remake?
Final Fantasy 7.
Oh, Final Fantasy. Sorry. I'm not.
Eventually. PC. Probably when it comes out on PC, unless people want me to stream it earlier. It's all good.
It looked like Forza for some reason. I don't know why I said that. My bad. Okay, guys. It's been 3.5 hours. I think this is a good spot to end it. Of course, if you guys missed any of this, you can watch it after the show here on my YouTube channel or here in the Twitch video section. If you guys enjoyed the show, we're going to have another one next week with a group of friends of mine that you should not miss. I'm not going to spoil who it is yet, but we'll see how it goes. Next Saturday, 8 p.m. Pacific, right here on this channel. If you guys enjoyed it, give the channel a follow. And, of course, don't forget to go follow Music here, streaming.
Same for my community here, because I know I recognize a bunch of people in chat. Please give a follow to Julian. He's a great dude. So thank you, man, for having me here. It was very kind of you to have me.
Yeah, this was a lot longer than I expected. Man, Music, you're a talker, my man. You're a talker.
I could talk, like I said, I could probably talk about Battlefield for so many days on end. It's not even fun.
Thank you, man. All right, well, it was a good talk, guys. Stick around here. We're gonna go raid somebody, probably here in the Battlefield section. Music, stick around here. We'll say our goodbyes. And again, guys, thank you so much. Thanks for the follows, guys. And we shall see you tomorrow. I'm just gonna do regular old stream and for Battlefield 5 gameplay. And yeah, that'll be pretty much it. Music, have a good night.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, man.
Chat, good night, guys.
Good night, chat. See you later.